The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Warp fields bend spacetime through calculated manipulation of subspace geometry. Transporters convert matter to energy through predictable quantum patterns. Even the Hadron wormhole, with all its seemingly mystical properties, follows consistent rules that can be measured, analyzed, and documented. But what happens when something tears through the fabric of reality itself, bringing with it physics that shouldn't exist, technology that defies every known principle of faster-than-light travel, and warriors trained for a war no one in this universe has ever imagined? Deep Space Nine's sensor grid detected the anomaly at 0347 hours station time. Not a wormhole opening, the energy signature was all wrong. Not a cloaked vessel decloaking, the spatial distortion was too massive. Chief Miles O'Brien stared at his console in ops, watching readings that made absolutely no sense cascade across his display. "Major," he called out to Kira Nerys, who stood reviewing tactical deployments near the situation table. "We've got something big folding into normal space, bearing 271 Mark IV. Range, 40,000 kilometers and closing." Kira's expression hardened instantly. The Dominion War had taught everyone on DS9 to assume the worst. Red alert. Raise shields. Get Captain Sisko up here now. The station's klaxons blared as crew scrambled to battle stations. On the view screen, space itself seemed to tear open, not the elegant blue-white shimmer of the Hadron wormhole, but a violent crimson rupture that pulsed with energy signatures O'Brien had never seen before. Subspace distortion spiked across every frequency simultaneously. And then it emerged. The vessel that materialized was like nothing in Starfleet's extensive database. Roughly 1,200 meters long, its hull design incorporated angles and curves that seemed to shift between utilitarian warship and something almost organic. The hull was predominantly white and red, with massive engine nacelles that bore no resemblance to standard warp drive configurations. Sensor scans revealed power readings that dwarfed anything short of a Borg cube. "Benjamin Sisko to ops," the comm system crackled. The captain's voice was alert but controlled. "Report." "Unknown vessel just appeared through some kind of spatial fold," Kira answered, her eyes never leaving the view screen. "Configuration doesn't match any known design: Federation, Dominion, Cardassian, Romulan, nothing. Power signatures are off the scale." O'Brien's fingers flew across his console. "Captain, I'm reading what looks like a massive antimatter reactor, but the confinement system is completely different from our magnetic bottle technology. There's also some kind of energy barrier around the hull that's not standard shields." And, he paused, double-checking the readings. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple smaller craft launching from the main vessel. They're heading straight for us." On the view screen, sleek fighter craft emerged from the unknown ship's launch bays. But as the station's sensors tracked them, something impossible happened. The fighters transformed mid-flight, their aerodynamic forms shifting and reconfiguring into humanoid battle mechs that maintained perfect formation and velocity. "What in the prophet's name?" Kira breathed. The lead fighter, now a mechanical warrior painted in distinctive skull insignia, performed a combat maneuver that would have torn apart any Federation runabout. It rolled, transformed back into fighter mode, then shifted into an intermediate form with legs deployed but wings still extended, firing weapons that resembled nothing in Starfleet's arsenal. Captain Benjamin Sisko strode into ops, still fastening his uniform jacket. He took one look at the view screen and his command presence immediately filled the room. "Hail them. All frequencies." Kira worked her console. "No response, sir. They're not using subspace communications. I'm detecting some kind of fold-wave transmission, but our systems can't decode it." "Captain," O'Brien interrupted, his tone urgent. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships just dropped out of warp, bearing 092 Mark III. They're targeting the unknown vessel." Of course they were. The Dominion controlled this sector of space through overwhelming force and paranoid aggression. Any unknown variable was treated as a threat to be eliminated. The Jem'Hadar ships, bred for combat and loyalty to the founders, wouldn't hesitate or question. The 3 attack ships opened fire immediately with polaron beams, weapons designed to cut through Federation shields like they weren't there. The beams struck the unknown vessel's hull and dissipated against that strange energy barrier O'Brien had detected, barely causing the massive ship to register the impact. Then the unknown vessel responded. What happened next would be analyzed in Starfleet tactical databases for years. The transforming fighters, variable fighters, though no one on DS9 knew that term yet, executed combat maneuvers that violated every assumption about space combat engagement ranges and tactical doctrine. They closed to ranges measured in meters, not kilometers, transforming between modes with each evasive maneuver. The lead fighter, piloted by a warrior named Alto Sautom, though the crew of DS9 didn't know his name yet, shifted into Batroid mode and literally landed on the hull of a Jem'Hadar attack ship. His mecha's gun pod, a massive rotary cannon that fired depleted uranium rounds at hypersonic velocities, tore through the Dominion vessel's hull plating like tissue paper. Atmosphere vented explosively into space as the attack ship's structural integrity collapsed. The second Jem'Hadar vessel attempted to ram one of the fighters, a kamikaze tactic the Dominion employed without hesitation. The fighter's pilot, Ozma, veteran of countless Vajra encounters and leader of SMS Skull Squadron, transformed mid-approach and used his Batroid mode's superior maneuverability to literally flip over the attack ship while raking its dorsal surface with sustained fire. The Jem'Hadar ship exploded in a brilliant flash of plasma. The third attack ship never had a chance. The massive unknown vessel rotated with impossible grace for something its size, and sections of its hull began to move. Arms unfolded from what had seemed like engine blocks. Legs extended from the ventral hull. The entire ship transformed, shifting from a vessel into a colossal humanoid battle mech over 400 meters tall. "Mother of God," O'Brien whispered. The transformed ship, Macross Quarter in battle mode, though again, no one on DS9 could identify it, raised one massive arm. Energy gathered at what could only be called its fist, and a beam of coherent destruction lanced out. The third Jem'Hadar attack ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained. The entire engagement had lasted 47 seconds. Sisko stood perfectly still, his mind processing tactical implications at lightning speed. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships destroyed with almost contemptuous ease. Variable geometry fighters that outperformed anything in known space. A capital ship that transformed into a battle mech and wielded firepower that rivaled Dominion battlecruisers. And they had just arrived in his space station's defensive perimeter with a damaged ship and nowhere to go. "Chief," Sisko said quietly, "keep trying to establish communications." "Major, keep our shields up but hold fire." "Dax," he addressed his science officer who had just arrived in ops, "I need you to analyze everything we just saw. Odo, get your security teams ready but tell them to stand down unless I give explicit orders." He turned back to the view screen, where the massive transformed ship was slowly shifting back into its vessel configuration. The fighters formed up in a defensive pattern, their vigilance obvious even across 40,000 kilometers of space. "This," Sisko said softly, "is going to change everything. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper." On the bridge of the Macross Quarter, Captain Jeffrey Wilder gripped his command chair as damage reports flooded in. The emergency fold jump had saved them from the Vajra swarm, but it had also stranded them somewhere the navigation charts didn't recognize, where the stars themselves were arranged in completely unfamiliar patterns. And they had just destroyed 3 ships of a configuration their databases had never seen before, in a universe where nothing, not the sensor readings, not the background radiation, not even the fundamental frequency of subspace, matched home. Lieutenant Luca Angeloni, SMS Skull Squadron's technical specialist, frantically worked his console in the quarter's CIC. "Captain, fold drive is severely damaged." The dimensional transition caused cascade failures in the fold quartz matrix. Even if we could generate a fold bubble, I can't guarantee it wouldn't tear the ship apart. Ozma Lee's face appeared on the communications screen, his VF-25's Messiah in fighter mode as he led the squadron in defensive formation. Quarter actual, Skull Leader. We've got what looks like a space station directly ahead, roughly Earth-style construction but with some weird rotating habitat sections. No hostile action detected, but they've got shields up and weapons charged. Wilder made his decision in the span of a heartbeat, the same combat instinct that had kept him and his crew alive through 100 Vajra engagements. All units, maintain defensive posture but do not fire unless fired upon. Communications, broadcast on all frequencies, we are not hostile, repeat, we are not hostile. Our vessel is damaged and we require assistance. Sir, his communications officer reported, they're using some kind of subspace carrier wave we don't have translation protocols for. I can't decode their transmissions. Keep trying. And someone get me a linguistics specialist who can figure out. Captain, the tactical officer interrupted. Massive spatial distortion opening, bearing 173 Mark 8. Energy signature matches those ships we just engaged. Multiple contacts emerging from warp, 20 vessels and counting. They're forming up for attack pattern Omega. Through the quarter's forward viewports, the Dominion reinforcement fleet materialized like a swarm of predatory insects. And every single one of them was targeting the impossible ship that had just destroyed 3 of their attack vessels with terrifying efficiency. The war, it seemed, had found them even here. Captain Benjamin Sisko had commanded Deep Space Nine through Cardassian treachery, Dominion invasions, and encounters with beings that existed outside linear time itself. He had learned to make impossible decisions in seconds, to weigh countless variables while polaron beams burned through his shields and his crew's lives hung in the balance. This decision took him less than a heartbeat. Kira, drop shields and hail that unknown vessel again. All frequencies, every protocol we have. He stepped closer to the view screen as the Dominion fleet continued to materialize, their formation a textbook encirclement pattern. Chief, route emergency power to weapons and prepare tractor beams. Dax, I need trajectory calculations for a close support defense pattern. Major Kira turned from her console, surprise evident on her face. Benjamin, we don't know anything about them. They could be a lot of things, Major. But right now, 20 Dominion warships are about to turn this sector into a graveyard, and that vessel just proved it can fight. Sisko's voice carried absolute certainty. The enemy of my enemy gets a chance to talk before they get vaporized. Now hail them. Jadzia Dax's hands moved across her science console with practiced precision, her trill spots visible as she concentrated. Benjamin, I'm analyzing the energy signatures from their weapons. The projectile weapons use conventional kinetic principles, but the energy beams operate on principles I've never seen. It's not phased energy, not disruptors, not anything in our database. Captain. O'Brien's voice cracked with urgency. The Dominion fleet is charging weapons. Jem'Hadar battlecruisers, attack ships, and, bloody hell, that's a Breen warship with them. We've got maybe 30 seconds before they open fire. On the view screen, the massive unknown vessel remained in its standard configuration, its transformed fighters maintaining a defensive perimeter. Sisko could see the tactical situation clearly. The Dominion held overwhelming numerical superiority, but that ship had just demonstrated firepower that could turn the tide. If it chose to. Still no response to hails, Captain, Kira reported. But I'm detecting what might be communication attempts on non-standard frequencies. They're trying to reach us, we just can't decode. The lead Jem'Hadar battlecruiser opened fire. Polaron beams lanced across space, joined immediately by disruptor fire from the Breen vessel and a cascade of torpedoes from the attack ships. The Dominion's tactical doctrine was simple and brutally effective: concentrate overwhelming firepower on a single target until it ceased to exist, then move to the next target. The unknown vessel's response was equally direct but far more sophisticated. That strange energy barrier flared brilliant blue-white as weapons impacts dissipated across its surface. The massive ship rotated along its longitudinal axis with a grace that defied its size, presenting minimal cross-section to the incoming fire while its own weapons batteries opened up. Beam cannons that O'Brien's sensors registered as operating on some kind of dimensional resonance principle carved through Dominion shields, and missile launchers deployed from hidden hull sections, releasing salvos that maneuvered with impossible agility. The transformed fighters scattered into attack formation, and Sisko watched tactical genius unfold in real time. The lead fighter, the one with skull insignia, shifted into its intermediate configuration, legs deployed for enhanced maneuverability while maintaining forward thrust. It wove through incoming fire with centimeter precision, then transformed fully into a humanoid battle mech that landed on the hull of a Jem'Hadar attack ship. The mech's gunpod fired point-blank into the ship's impulse drive, and the resulting explosion sent debris cascading across the battlefield. Another fighter, painted in blue and white with what looked like medical markings, provided covering fire with beam weapons, while a third, massive and green, clearly heavier than its companions, simply plowed through a Dominion torpedo spread and emptied its entire missile payload into a battlecruiser's ventral hull. The Dominion ship listed, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. "They're good," Kira said quietly, professional respect coloring her tone. "Really good." "They're used to fighting something," Dax added, her eyes tracking the combat maneuvers on her displays. "Look at their formation patterns, they're designed for fighting multiple small targets simultaneously, like swarm tactics. The Dominion's numerical advantage isn't the advantage they think it is." Sisko made his second command decision of the engagement. "Helm, bring us about. Tactical, target the Breen vessel, they're the biggest threat to our shields. Kira, get the Defiant launched. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." "Aye, Captain." Kira's response carried fierce satisfaction as she activated the station's combat protocols. The USS Defiant, Benjamin Sisko's personal warship and one of the most lethal vessels in Starfleet's arsenal, detached from its docking port and accelerated into the battle. Small, fast, and armored with ablative hull plating that could absorb punishment that would cripple larger vessels, the Defiant was designed specifically to fight Dominion forces. Sisko's voice carried across the station's command frequency. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Dominion forces are engaging an unknown vessel in our defensive perimeter. We are providing defensive support. Target Dominion vessels only, and watch your fire, those fighters are fast." On the Macross Quarter's bridge, Captain Jeffrey Wilder watched new contacts appear on his tactical display as the space station deployed additional defenses and a small but heavily armed vessel joined the fight on their side. "Captain, the station is hailing us again," his communications officer reported. "They've adjusted frequencies, trying to find something we can decode. And sir, they're shooting at the hostiles, not us." Wilder's weathered face showed the barest hint of relief. In a universe where everything was unknown, finding someone willing to shoot at your enemies instead of you counted as a minor miracle. "Keep trying to establish communications. Tactical, coordinate our fire with that small warship. Don't let them get caught in our missile spread. And someone get me Ozma." Skull Leader's face appeared on the command screen, his VF-25S Messiah pulling a maneuver that would have liquefied an unenhanced pilot's internal organs. SMS pilots were trained and augmented to handle forces that would kill normal humans, and Ozma Lee was one of the best. "Quarter actual, Skull Leader. I see our new friends brought toys to the party. Coordinate with that vessel, the small one. Looks like a gunship. They're on our side for now." Wilder's tone carried his trademark dry humor even in the middle of a firefight. "Try not to ram them while you're showing off." "Copy that, Quarter. Skull Squadron, form up on the gunship. Let's show these bugs what variable geometry can do." The Defiant's tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Nog, watched his sensors with growing amazement as the unknown fighters formed up on their position. The young Ferengi had served with Captain Sisko long enough to recognize tactical brilliance when he saw it, and whoever commanded these fighters understood space combat at an instinctive level. Captain Sisko, Nog reported over the comm, the unknown fighters are coordinating with us. They're using our targeting data to avoid friendly fire and concentrating on targets we designate as priority threats. From DS9's ops, Sisko allowed himself a slight smile. Understood, Lieutenant. Looks like they're smart enough to recognize allies when they see them. Major, divert auxiliary power to forward phasers. Let's give them something to work with. The battle evolved into a chaotic dance of destruction. Deep Space Nine's phaser arrays carved through Dominion shields while the Defiant darted between larger vessels, quantum torpedoes punching holes in battlecruiser hulls. The unknown fighters exploited every opening, their transforming capabilities allowing them to shift tactics mid-engagement in ways no fixed configuration fighter could match. Skull 4 to lead, came Luca Angeloni's voice over the Squadron channel. I'm analyzing the friendlies' weapon signatures. They're using some kind of nadion particle beam with phased energy modulation. Completely different technology from ours, but definitely directed energy weapons. And get this, they're actually less advanced than our systems in some ways. Less advanced? Ozma Lee's voice cut through the tactical chatter with command authority. Save the science lecture for after we survive, Luca. Skull 2, watch your 6, you've got a Dominion fighter on your tail. Clan Clang, call sign Skull 2 and the Squadron's only Zentradi pilot currently in Myclone form, pulled a maneuver that would have been impossible for a full-sized Zentradi but was perfectly suited to her VF-25G Messiah sniper configuration. On Deep Space Nine, Chief O'Brien monitored the battle with the practiced eye of someone who had survived the Setlik III massacre and dozens of engagements since. Captain, Dominion forces are breaking formation. They're taking too many casualties. I think they're preparing to withdraw. Confirmed, Dax added. The Breen vessel just took critical damage to its power distribution system, it's venting plasma and falling back. The Jem'Hadar are covering its retreat. DS9 had taken minimal damage, and the Defiant was already returning to dock. Now, let's try this again. Kira, hail the unknown vessel. If they're half as smart as they fight, they'll realize we just saved each other's lives. On the Macross Quarter, Captain Wilder received the report he'd been waiting for. Captain, we've established basic communications, his communications officer announced. They're using what they call universal translators, some kind of real-time language processing system. It's crude compared to our cultural database protocols, but it works. We're receiving a hail from the station commander. Wilder straightened his uniform and nodded. Put it through. And get me a proper first contact team, we're about to meet the neighbors. The view screen flickered, and the face of Captain Benjamin Sisko appeared. Human, clearly military bearing, with eyes that had seen both combat and command. Behind him, a diverse crew operated what looked like a command center that was simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. For a long moment, two captains from different universes simply studied each other, each recognizing competence and authority in the other. Then Sisko spoke, and the universal translator rendered his words into something the quarter's crew could understand. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of Deep Space Nine and the United Federation of Planets. You're a long way from wherever home is, and you just made some very dangerous enemies. But you also just helped us hold this station against Dominion forces, which in my book makes you allies until proven otherwise. He leaned forward slightly, a hint of a smile crossing his features. So how about we skip the part where we point weapons at each other and get straight to the part where you tell me how a ship that transforms into a giant robot just appeared in my space station's backyard? Captain Wilder found himself returning the smile despite everything, the damaged fold drive, the unknown universe, the fact that they had just been thrown into someone else's war. There was something about Sisko's directness that reminded him of fellow soldiers who understood that survival sometimes required trusting strangers. Captain Wilder, Strategic Military Services, Macross Quarter. We're as surprised to be here as you are to see us, Captain Sisko. And right now, we could really use somewhere to repair our ship, figure out where the hell we are, and maybe get a drink while we do it. I think, Sisko replied, we can arrange that. Welcome to Deep Space Nine, Captain. And welcome to the Alpha Quadrant. The conference room on Deep Space Nine's second level had hosted diplomatic negotiations with Cardassians, strategic planning sessions for Dominion war operations, and even a tense meeting with a Vorta diplomat who had smiled pleasantly while threatening genocide. But it had never hosted anything quite like this. Captain Jeffrey Wilder sat across from Captain Benjamin Sisko, with Major Kira Nerys and Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax representing DS9's command staff. On Wilder's side sat Lieutenant Commander Ozma Lee, still in his flight suit with Skull Squadron patches visible, and Lieutenant Luca Angeloni, who had brought what looked like a portable computer terminal that was busy scanning everything in the room with unconcealed curiosity. Between them sat Odo, Deep Space Nine's chief of security and the station's resident changeling. His humanoid form sat perfectly still, golden eyes observing the newcomers with the unwavering attention of someone who could literally reshape himself to investigate any threat. So let me make sure I understand this correctly, Sisko said, his hands folded on the table in front of him. You were engaged in combat with a species called the Vajra, insectoid aliens that use something called fold communications to coordinate hive tactics. During an emergency faster-than-light jump using what you call a fold drive, your ship intersected with some kind of dimensional anomaly and ended up here. That's the simplified version, Wilder confirmed. The technical details are complicated. Our fold drive operates by creating a localized superdimension space that allows near-instantaneous travel between 2 points. It's not the same as your warp drive technology, which from what Lieutenant Angeloni has been able to determine, works by warping the fabric of normal spacetime. Luca leaned forward, his enthusiasm for technical discussion momentarily overriding military protocol. Your subspace physics are fundamentally different from our superdimension principles. It's like imagine two different universes developed FTL travel independently, but one uses quantum tunneling and the other uses relativistic field manipulation. Both get you from point A to point B faster than light, but the underlying physics are incompatible. Dax's eyes lit up with scientific interest. She was a joined trill with 8 lifetimes of scientific experience, and the prospect of analyzing completely novel physics was exactly the kind of puzzle she lived for. Fascinating. I'd love to compare notes on your fold drive mechanics. We've encountered dimensional rifts before, but nothing that suggested entire parallel development of FTL technology. Perhaps we could arrange that, Wilder said diplomatically. Though I should mention that much of our technology is classified under SMS protocols. We're a private military contractor, not a government military force. That got Kira's attention. The Bajoran Major had fought too many battles against forces that operated outside governmental oversight. Private military? You mean mercenaries? Ozma Lee's expression hardened slightly. We prefer corporate security specialists. SMS, Strategic Military Services, contracts with the new United Nations Spacey to provide defense and escort services for colonial fleets. We're not pirates or guns for hire. We have rules, codes of conduct, and we don't take jobs that involve conquest or oppression. But you do take money for military services, Kira pressed. How is that different from the Cardassian military contractors who occupied my world? The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Wilder raised a hand before Ozma could respond with the anger that was building behind his eyes. Major Kira, I understand your concern. But there's a fundamental difference between defending civilian colonists from hostile alien species and conquering occupied territory. SMS exists because humanity in our universe learned the hard way that we're not alone, and sometimes the things we meet want us dead. We're the line between colony ships full of families and the Vajra swarms that would consume them. Sisko intervened smoothly, his diplomatic instincts recognizing the conversation was heading toward confrontation rather than cooperation. I think we can all agree that motivations matter as much as methods. Captain Wilder, your people fought alongside us against Dominion forces without hesitation. That speaks to your character, regardless of who signs your paychecks. He pulled up a holographic display that showed the recent battle. What I need to understand is your capabilities. Your fighters transform in ways that defy conventional engineering. Your ship converted into a 400-meter battle mech. And your weapons cut through Dominion shields like they weren't there. If you're going to be in this sector while you repair your full drive, I need to know what you can do and what threats you might face. Wilder nodded, appreciating the direct approach. It can operate as a standard warship or transform into battle mode for maximum firepower. Our main weapon in battle mode is a heavy quantum beam cannon, what we call a Macross cannon. It's capable of destroying capital ships with a single shot, but it requires significant power and has a recharge cycle measured in minutes. O'Brien, who had joined the meeting via comm link from Ops, whistled softly. That's the beam that vaporized the third Jem'Hadar attack ship. Our sensors registered energy output equivalent to a photon torpedo spread, but concentrated into a single coherent beam. If you don't mind me asking, Captain, what's powering a weapon system like that? Thermonuclear fusion reactors with fold carbon reinforcement, Luca answered before Wilder could respond. We use an advanced version of what you would call matter-antimatter annihilation, but with dimensional stabilization to prevent cascade failures. It's efficient, compact, and generates enough power to run both our fold drive and weapons systems simultaneously. Dax exchanged glances with O'Brien's image on the display. Chief, we need to schedule time with their engineering team. This could revolutionize our understanding of power generation. Aye, Lieutenant. Though I'm betting their over-technology didn't come from humans originally. Am I right, Captain? Wilder's expression became guarded. You're perceptive, Chief. Our transformation technology and fold drives are reverse-engineered from an alien vessel that crashed on Earth in 1999. We call it the SDF-1 Macross. The aliens who built it, the Supervision Army, though they were fleeing from an even larger threat, had technology centuries beyond what humanity had achieved. And you just took it. Kira's tone was sharp. Alien technology you didn't understand, and you built weapons from it. We didn't have a choice, Ozma interjected, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. 10 years after we started reverse engineering the Macross, the original owners came looking for it. A fleet of giant humanoid aliens called the Zentradi, warriors bred for combat who had been fighting a war for thousands of years. They nearly destroyed Earth. The only reason humanity survived was because we had those weapons, that technology, and people willing to use them. He leaned forward, his intensity filling the room. You want to judge us for using alien technology? Fine. But understand this, my parents died when the Zentradi bombarded Earth. Billions died. The only reason I'm sitting here is because people like Captain Global, Commander Fokker, and a generation of soldiers fought with every weapon they could build, beg, borrow, or steal. So yeah, we use over-technology. Because the alternative was extinction. Silence settled over the conference room. Odo finally spoke, his shapeshifter's voice carrying no judgment, only observation. Your species was forced to adapt to survive contact with more advanced civilizations. That's a familiar story in this quadrant. Indeed, Sisko agreed quietly. His own experiences with the Dominion, with species like the Borg who assimilated entire civilizations, gave him context that few Starfleet officers possessed. The question isn't where your technology came from, Captain Wilder. The question is what you intend to do with it now that you're here. Wilder met Sisko's gaze directly. Right now. We intend to repair our full drive and find a way home. We have our own war to fight, Captain. The Vajra are still a threat to human colonies, and SMS has contracts to fulfill. We didn't ask to be here, and while we're grateful for your assistance, we're not looking to get involved in local conflicts. That might not be your choice to make, Kira pointed out. The Dominion saw you destroy their ships. They saw technology they don't understand. Dax pulled up another display, this one showing the political map of the Alpha and Gamma quadrants. She's right, Captain. You've arrived in the middle of the largest interstellar war this quadrant has seen in decades. The Dominion controls most of the Gamma quadrant through overwhelming military force and genetic engineering. They're currently invading the Alpha Quadrant with the goal of imposing order, their order, on what they see as chaos. She highlighted various sectors. The United Federation of Planets is an alliance of over 150 member worlds dedicated to peaceful exploration and scientific advancement. We're opposed by the Dominion and currently allied with the Klingon Empire, a warrior culture that values honor and combat, and maintaining an uneasy peace with the Romulan Star Empire, who are strategically unpredictable. There's also the Cardassian Union, Sisko added, who recently allied with the Dominion after decades of conflict with the Federation. They're militaristic, authoritarian, and their intelligence service, the Obsidian Order, makes a habit of acquiring advanced technology through any means necessary. Wilder absorbed the information with a tactical officer's efficiency. So we've jumped from fighting bug aliens to landing in the middle of World War III, Interstellar Edition. Wonderful. It's more complicated than that, Odo interjected. The Dominion is led by changelings like myself, shapeshifters who call themselves founders. They created the Vorta to serve as administrators and the Jem'Hadar as soldiers. Both species are genetically engineered to be absolutely loyal. The Jem'Hadar in particular are bred for combat, addicted to a drug called Ketracel White that only the Vorta can provide, and trained from birth to view death in service to the founders as the highest honor. Lucas' fingers flew across his portable terminal. So they're like the Zentradi, genetically engineered warriors created for a specific purpose. Captain, this is eerily similar to what we faced after Space War I. The parallels are. Noted, Lieutenant, Wilder interrupted gently. Captain Sisko, I appreciate the intelligence briefing. But it doesn't change our primary objective, repair the quarter and get home. How long will it take to effect repairs, and what do you need from us in return? O'Brien's voice came through the comm. That depends on what's wrong with your fold drive, Captain. From what I've seen, your technology is advanced in some areas and completely different in others. I can help with structural repairs, power system diagnostics, things that are universal to any starship. But the fold drive itself? That's going to require your people walking my engineers through every step. I can work with your Chief O'Brien, Luca offered. And if Lieutenant Dax wants to compare notes on subspace versus superdimension physics, I'm sure we can find some common ground. But Captain Wilder's right, this is going to take time. The fold quartz matrix alone will need to be completely rebuilt, and we don't have replacement components. How long? Sisko asked directly. Luca and Wilder exchanged glances. Optimistically, 3 weeks. Realistically, a month, maybe more. And that's assuming we can fabricate replacement parts using your industrial replicators, which I'm not certain will work with fold carbon composite materials. Kira leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. A month. That's a long time to be sitting in Dominion space with a damaged ship. They'll come back, and next time they'll bring more firepower. Then we'll fight them again, Ozma said flatly. Skull Squadron can hold against anything they throw at us, especially with your station providing fire support. It's not that simple, Sisko countered. The Dominion has virtually unlimited resources from the Gamma Quadrant. They can afford to lose ships and soldiers in ways we can't. If they decide you're enough of a threat, they'll send 50 ships, 100 ships, whatever it takes to eliminate you. He stood, walking to the viewport that looked out over the Bajran system. But there might be another option. The Federation is always looking for tactical advantages against the Dominion. Your transformation technology, your weapons systems, your combat doctrine. All of it represents principles the Dominion hasn't encountered before. If you were willing to share some of that information, Starfleet Command might be willing to provide resources to help repair your ship. You mean a technology exchange, Wilder said carefully. We give you variable fighter schematics, you give us industrial fabricators and engineering support. Something like that. Though I should warn you, Starfleet has regulations about acquiring technology from unknown civilizations. The Prime Directive forbids interference with less advanced cultures, but it also cautions against accepting technology we don't fully understand. Wilder couldn't help but laugh, though there was no humor in it. Captain Sisko, we are literally sitting in a ship built from reverse-engineered alien technology that we barely understood when we started. The idea that anyone would turn down a technological advantage because it might be dangerous? That's either admirably principled or suicidally naive, and I'm not sure which. It's both, Kira admitted. The Prime Directive has saved countless civilizations from cultural contamination. It's also gotten Starfleet officers killed when they stood by and watched people die because interfering would violate protocol. Sisko turned back from the viewport. The point is, Captain, you have options. You can try to remain neutral and hope the Dominion doesn't make you a priority target. You can ally with the Federation and gain access to our resources and protection. Or you can strike out on your own and see if you can find allies elsewhere in the quadrant. But you need to make that choice soon, because neutrality in wartime is a luxury that rarely lasts. Before Wilder could respond, Odo's combadge chirped. The changeling tapped it immediately. Odo here. Security Chief, this is Promenade Patrol, came an urgent voice. We've got a situation developing near the Replomat. Some of the civilians have noticed the unknown vessels docking, and there's a crowd gathering. A few Cardassian merchants are asking pointed questions about where these ships came from, and I'm fairly certain at least one of them is Obsidian Order. Odo's expression didn't change, but his voice carried unmistakable authority. Detain anyone asking military-grade intelligence questions. Politely, but firmly. I'm on my way. He stood, looking at Sisko. Captain, we have a security concern. Ozma stood as well, his hand instinctively moving toward where his sidearm would be if he were in full combat gear. Captain, we should get back to the quarter. If there are hostile intelligence operatives on this station, they'll be targeting our people. Agreed, Wilder said. Captain Sisko, I think we need to continue this conversation after we've both had time to think. And after we've secured our respective positions. Sisko nodded, understanding the military necessity. Fair enough. Major Kira will coordinate with your security personnel. Lieutenant Dax, work with Lieutenant Angeloni on preliminary engineering assessments. Chief O'Brien, start cataloging what we'll need for repairs. And everyone, keep this quiet. The last thing we need is panic about dimensional invaders or whatever rumors are already spreading through the promenade. As the meeting broke up, Sisko caught Wilder's arm gently. Captain, one more thing. You said you're trying to get home to continue fighting the Vitra. I understand duty and I understand loyalty to your mission. But consider this. They brought you here for a reason, Captain Wilder. The question is whether you'll be ready when you figure out what that reason is. Before Wilder could respond, klaxons blared throughout the station. O'Brien's voice cut across all channels with urgent clarity, red alert. Cardassian warship just dropped out of warp, heading directly for DS9. They're hailing us, demanding to know why Dominion forces engaged an unknown vessel in Federation-controlled space. And they want to inspect the unknown ship personally. Sisko's expression hardened into command mode instantly. Looks like word travels fast. Captain Wilder, I strongly suggest your people stay aboard your vessel. This is about to get political, and political in the Alpha Quadrant can be just as dangerous as combat. Understood, Wilder replied. Skull Leader, get your people back to the quarter. Full combat alert, but weapons hold. Let's not start a war because someone got nervous. As the officers dispersed to their respective commands, Luca Angeloni quietly downloaded the strategic data Dax had shared about the Alpha Quadrant political situation. His analytical mind was already processing the implications, comparing Dominion tactics to Vajra swarm behavior, Cardassian intelligence methods to corporate espionage he'd encountered in the SMS world. They had jumped from one war into another. And whether they liked it or not, the Macross Quarter and Skull Squadron were now players in a conflict that spanned quadrants and involved forces that made even the Vajra look manageable by comparison. The only question was which side they would end up on, if they got to choose at all. The Cardassian warship Traeger maintained position 3 kilometers off Deep Space Nine's docking ring, close enough to demonstrate authority but far enough to avoid immediate weapons range. Gul Evek stood on his bridge with the rigid posture of a career military officer who had survived decades of Cardassian military politics through careful calculation and ruthless efficiency. Status of the unknown vessels, he demanded. His tactical officer, Glyn Telek, worked his console with practiced precision. 2 fighter craft have returned to the primary vessel and entered what appears to be a hangar bay. 4 remain on patrol in a defensive formation around the larger ship. The capital vessel itself has not powered weapons, but their shields remain at full strength. Interesting. Evek clasped his hands behind his back, studying the tactical display. They maintain defensive posture but do not escalate. Either they lack sufficient firepower to threaten us, or they're intelligent enough to recognize that opening fire would be strategically unwise. Sir, Deep Space Nine is hailing, his communications officer reported. Captain Sisko. Of course he is. Put him through. Evek composed his features into an expression of concerned authority. The Cardassians had perfected the art of appearing reasonable while pursuing their own interests, and Evek was a master of the technique. Captain Sisko's face appeared on the view screen, and Evek noted the subtle tension around the human's eyes. Good, Sisko was worried, which meant there was leverage to exploit. Gul Evek, Sisko said with diplomatic neutrality. This is an unexpected visit. Deep Space Nine's operations are proceeding normally, and there's no need for Cardassian military presence in Bajoran space. Captain Sisko, I'm certain you understand my concern. Evek's voice carried practiced sympathy. Dominion forces engaged an unknown vessel in what is technically disputed space, Bajoran by treaty, but Federation administered with Cardassian commercial interests still present. As allies of the Dominion, the Cardassian Union has a vested interest in understanding what occurred here. The engagement was entirely defensive, Sisko replied evenly. The unknown vessel was attacked without provocation by Dominion forces. Deep Space Nine provided assistance in accordance with our humanitarian obligations and our responsibility to maintain stability in this sector. Evek smiled thinly. Humanitarian obligations. How admirably Federation of you, Captain. But surely you can understand that from the Dominion's perspective, an unknown vessel with vastly superior technology appearing without warning represents a significant security concern. The Founders would very much like to speak with these newcomers. Peacefully, of course. Of course, Sisko echoed, not bothering to hide his skepticism. And the Obsidian Order agents you've undoubtedly stationed on my promenade? Are they here for peaceful conversation as well? Captain, I'm shocked you would suggest. Gul Evek, let's skip the diplomatic theater. Sisko leaned forward slightly, his command presence filling the screen. You want access to that ship and its technology? The answer is no. The vessel is under Federation protection while they repair damage sustained during the unprovoked Dominion attack. Any attempt to board, scan, or interfere with their operations will be considered an act of aggression against the Federation. Evek's expression hardened. Bold words, Captain. But the Federation is losing this war. Every week, more systems fall to Dominion control. Your precious Starfleet is stretched thin, and the Klingon are too busy fighting their own battles to come to your rescue. One Cardassian warship might not concern you, but I have 3 more in the sector. And if I call for Dominion reinforcements, then you'll start a battle you can't win, Sisko interrupted. That unknown vessel destroyed 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships in under a minute. Their fighters move in ways that make your best pilots look like Academy cadets. Weapons that operated on principles Cardassian scientists couldn't immediately classify. I want to speak with their commander, Evek said finally. Face to face, on neutral ground. Surely that's a reasonable request between professional military officers. Sisko considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll extend the invitation. Whether they accept is their decision. But Gul Evek, any intelligence operatives you have on this station are to cease all surveillance activities immediately. If my security chief finds anyone attempting to infiltrate the unknown vessel's systems or personnel, they'll be detained and tried as spies. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, Captain. Though I wonder if your changeling security chief's definition of infiltration might be overly broad. Odo's judgment is sound. I suggest you trust it. Sisko's tone left no room for negotiation. I'll contact you when I have an answer about the meeting. Sisko out. The view screen went dark, leaving Evek alone with his thoughts and his crew's expectant gazes. Glyn Telek, contact our assets on the station. Tell them to suspend active intelligence gathering but maintain observation posts. I want to know everything about these newcomers, what they eat, how they communicate, what repairs they're making. Everything. Yes, sir. And if the changeling detects our people, then they're expendable. Evek's voice was cold. The Obsidian Order didn't survive this long by being sentimental. But tell them to be careful. If that technology is what I think it is, acquiring it could change the entire balance of power in this war. The fold quartz matrix is fractured in multiple locations, the dimensional stabilizers are completely offline, and the superdimension space generator has microfractures throughout its containment field. Translation for those of us who aren't engineers. Ozma asked from his position near the tactical station. We're not going anywhere without extensive repairs, Luca simplified. Even if we tried to generate a fold bubble now, it would collapse microseconds after formation. At best, we'd accomplish nothing. At worst, we'd create a superdimension cascade that could tear the ship apart. Wilder rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. How long for repairs using our own resources? Without replacement parts? 6 months, maybe longer. With fabricated components that match our specifications? 3 to 4 weeks minimum. But Captain, I'm not sure this universe's industrial technology can fabricate fold carbon composites. Their matter replicators operate on different principles than our molecular assembly systems. Meaning we need their help, which means we need to play politics. Wilder's tone was resigned. I hate politics. Should have stayed a simple VF pilot like me, Ozma said with dark humor. All we have to worry about is not getting shot. A priority communication alert interrupted their conversation. The bridge communications officer looked up from her console. These were 2 professional officers trying to navigate impossible circumstances, and Wilder found himself appreciating Sisko's directness. Captain Wilder, I'll be blunt. Gul Evek of the Cardassian military wants to meet with you face to face. He's claiming it's professional courtesy between military commanders, but what he really wants is intelligence on your capabilities and technology. And if I refuse? Then he'll take it as confirmation that you have something worth hiding, which will make you an even higher priority target for Cardassian and Dominion intelligence services. They value order, hierarchy, and strategic deception. Gul Evek will say whatever serves Cardassian interests, and he'll be recording every detail of your appearance, mannerisms, and responses for analysis. Noted. Where and when? I recommend the wardroom on Deep Space Nine. Neutral ground, secure location, and my security chief can monitor for any covert scanning attempts. Evac will probably bring 1 or 2 subordinates, so I'd suggest you do the same. Wilder considered his options. I'll bring Commander Lee. He's my senior military officer and has more combat experience than anyone else on this ship. And Lieutenant Angeloni as technical specialist, though I'll instruct him to answer no technical questions. Smart choice. Captain, one more thing, Cardassians respect strength but they also respect cunning. Don't lie to Evac because he'll know, but you don't have to volunteer information either. And if he tries to intimidate you, remember that bluster is often a negotiating tactic. Understood. When? 2 hours. That gives you time to prepare and Evac time to brief his people. I'll have security escort you from your ship to the wardroom. Captain Sisko, thank you. I get the sense you didn't have to warn me about any of this. Sisko's expression softened slightly. Captain, you fought alongside us without hesitation when you could have run or stayed neutral. That means something. And regardless of what some regulations say, I judge people by their actions, not their origins. You've proven you're willing to stand against oppression, which in my book makes you someone worth protecting. The transmission ended, leaving Wilder with 2 hours to prepare for a diplomatic confrontation that could determine whether SMS became an ally, a target, or a prize to be fought over by every faction in this quadrant. The wardroom on Deep Space Nine was designed to be deliberately neutral. Functional furniture, subdued lighting, no cultural decorations that might favor one species over another. Odo stood in one corner in his humanoid form, perfectly still, while 2 of his security officers maintained positions near the doors. Captain Wilder entered first, flanked by Ozma Lee and Luca Angeloni. The SMS officers wore their standard uniforms, practical military design with the distinctive SMS logo and rank insignia. Ozma kept his hands loose and ready, old combat instincts never quite suppressed even in supposedly peaceful settings. Ghoul Evac was already present with 2 subordinates, Glyn Telek and a female officer introduced as Glyn Marta, identified as a technical specialist. All 3 Cardassians wore their distinctive military armor with its ridged neck guards and scaled appearance. Captain Wilder, Evac began with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I am Ghoul Evac of the Cardassian Third Order. These are my tactical advisor Glyn Telek and technical specialist Glyn Marta. Ghoul Evac. Wilder's tone was professionally neutral. Commander Ozma Lee, my squadron leader, and Lieutenant Luca Angeloni, engineering specialist. Though I should clarify that Lieutenant Angeloni is here as an observer, not as a technical resource. Of course. Evac gestured to the table. Please, let's sit. I understand you've had quite an eventful arrival in our quadrant. They arranged themselves around the table, Cardassians on one side, SMS officers on the other, with Odo's golden eyes tracking every movement from his corner position. Eventful is one word for it, Wilder allowed. We were conducting operations in our home space when a dimensional anomaly displaced us here. We defended ourselves against what we later learned were Dominion forces, and now we're trying to repair our vessel so we can return home. Dimensional anomaly, Evac repeated thoughtfully. Fascinating. We've encountered spatial anomalies before, but nothing that could transport an entire capital ship across what I assume are vast distances. Your technology must be quite remarkable. Our full drive operates on principles that appear to be incompatible with this universe's physics, Wilder said carefully. Which is why we need time and resources to make repairs. Glyn Marta leaned forward slightly. Full drive. An interesting term. Does it involve the manipulation of subspace fields, or perhaps quantum tunneling through higher dimensional space? Neither, Luca interjected before Wilder could stop him. The young engineer's academic nature sometimes overrode his operational security training. Full drives create a localized bubble of superdimension space that exists adjacent to normal four-dimensional spacetime. By traversing through superdimension space, we can achieve effective faster-than-light travel without actually exceeding light speed in conventional terms. Wilder shot Luca a warning glance, but the damage was done. Marta's eyes had lit up with scientific interest, while Evek's expression showed the satisfaction of someone who had just extracted valuable intelligence. Superdimension space, Evek said slowly. So you're not warping conventional space as the Federation does, but rather accessing an entirely separate dimensional framework. That would explain why your arrival created such unusual spatial distortions. It would also explain why their weapons operate on unfamiliar principles, Telek added. If their technology developed along completely different physical laws, their energy weapons might function through dimensional resonance rather than conventional particle beam projection. Ozma's jaw tightened, and he cut in with deliberate aggression. Ghoul Evek, with respect, this is starting to sound less like professional courtesy and more like a technical intelligence briefing. Captain Wilder said we're here to repair our ship and leave. What exactly do you want? Evek's smile became more genuine, appreciating the direct challenge. Commander Lee, I like you. You don't waste time with diplomatic niceties. Very well, I'll be equally direct. The Dominion sees your vessel as a threat. The Federation sees you as a potential ally. The Cardassian Union sees you as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Wilder asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. For technological exchange, of course. Your transformation systems, your fold drive principles, your weapons technology, all of it represents advancements that could shift the balance of power in this war. The Cardassian Union would be willing to provide significant resources to help repair your vessel in exchange for, shall we say, technical consultation. You want us to give you our technology, Ozma said flatly. So you can build weapons to use against the Federation. Wilder studied Evek's face, looking for deception and finding only calculated truth. Surely someone in your organization has the power to authorize technological exchange. The SMS Board of Directors, which is currently in another universe and unreachable due to our damaged fold drive. Wilder's tone was polite but firm. Even if we could contact them, the legal and ethical implications of sharing over technology with civilizations that aren't part of our cultural framework would take months of review. Luca added quietly, there's also the practical problem that much of our technology simply wouldn't work in this universe. Fold drives require fold quartz, which is a crystalline structure that forms in superdimension space. Your universe doesn't appear to have superdimension space, which means you couldn't fabricate fold quartz even if we gave you the complete technical specifications. Marta looked frustrated. Surely some aspects of your technology could be adapted. Your transformation systems, for example, those are mechanical engineering solutions that should work regardless of dimensional physics. Transformation systems that rely on over-technology-derived materials with properties your metallurgy can't reproduce, Luca countered. The VF-25's transformation frame uses energy conversion armor that changes molecular structure during transformation. Your universe's materials science would need to advance decades just to understand the principles, much less replicate them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Cardassians had come expecting to acquire revolutionary technology, only to discover that the technology was fundamentally incompatible with their universe's physical laws. Evek's expression cycled through frustration, calculation, and finally grudging respect. I see. Your technology is useless to us, and our resources are insufficient to repair your vessel. That's unfortunate. Not entirely useless, Wilder said carefully. We can share tactical doctrine, combat strategies, and general principles. The way we fight the Vajra might have applications for fighting the Dominion. But the actual technology? I'm sorry, Ghoul Evek, but even if I wanted to help, I literally can't. Ozma watched the Cardassian officers exchange glances, reading body language honed through years of combat. They were disappointed but not hostile, which meant they were professionals who could accept reality when it was clearly explained. But I would offer one piece of advice, from one military officer to another. I'm listening. Choose your allies carefully. The Federation will offer you principles and ideals. The Dominion will offer you power and order. The Klingon will offer you honor and glory. But remember that in wartime, everyone's promises are contingent on survival. Trust your own judgment, Captain, and don't let anyone, not the Federation, not the Dominion, not even my own people, convince you that their war is worth dying for. Wilder stood as well, and for a moment, two professional soldiers from different universes understood each other perfectly. Thank you, Gul Evek. I'll remember that. After the Cardassians departed, Odo emerged from his corner. That went better than expected. Evek is ruthless, but he's pragmatic. Once he understood your technology wasn't accessible, he shifted strategies immediately. He also just gave us valuable intelligence, Ozma pointed out. He basically admitted the Cardassians aren't loyal to the Dominion, they're just surviving. That's a fracture point that could be exploited. Which is exactly why he told us, Wilder said thoughtfully. Evek wants us to know that Cardassia isn't fully committed to the Dominion cause. It's an invitation to consider them potential allies instead of automatic enemies. Political games, Ozma muttered. I hate political games. Give me a straightforward enemy I can shoot any day. Luca was already working on his portable terminal. Captain, I've been analyzing the technical questions they asked. Marta is definitely Obsidian Order, not just a technical specialist. Her questions were too precise, too focused on specific vulnerabilities. She was trying to map out our systems for potential infiltration or sabotage. Odo's expression became even more alert. Then we need to increase security protocols immediately. If the Obsidian Order has identified you as a potential intelligence target, they won't stop just because diplomatic channels failed. Agreed, Wilder said. Odo, what do you need from us to help secure the ship? Access to your security systems so I can identify any unauthorized scanning attempts. A list of your crew so I can track anyone who shouldn't be aboard. And permission to place covert monitoring devices near your docking ports, strictly to detect infiltration, not to spy on your operations. Wilder nodded. You'll have it. But there were other factions, other intelligence services, and other ways to extract information than polite conversation. And somewhere in the Gamma Quadrant, the founders were receiving reports about a vessel with impossible technology and considering what that meant for their carefully ordered universe. The real test, Wilder suspected, was still to come. The Klingon bird of prey IKS-CH-10 decloaked 70,000 kilometers from Deep Space Nine with the theatrical flair that Klingon considered proper military protocol. Its disruptor arrays were charged but not locked on any targets, sending a clear message: we come for conversation, but we are ready for battle if conversation fails. On the bridge of the Macross Quarter, tactical alerts sounded immediately. The watch officer's voice carried professional calm that barely concealed tension. Captain Wilder to the bridge. Unknown vessel just decloaked on our starboard quarter. Configuration doesn't match previous contacts, looks like some kind of bird design with wings that, wait, weapons are powering down. They're hailing us directly, not the station. Captain Wilder arrived on the bridge still fastening his uniform jacket, having caught maybe 4 hours of sleep in the past 36 hours. Show me. They're using what translates as warrior who leads in combat, not ship captain. Cultural distinction, Luca called out from his engineering station, already pulling up data from the Federation cultural database they'd been given access to. Klingon have specific terminology for different types of authority. Military commanders are addressed differently than political leaders. Put them through, Wilder ordered. And get Commander Lee up here. Something tells me this conversation is going to require someone who speaks warrior culture. The view screen shifted to show the interior of a Klingon bridge, darker than Federation design, with more emphasis on weapon status displays than scientific instruments. And standing in the center was a Klingon who looked like he'd been carved from stone and tempered in battle. General Martok, son of Urthog, wore his scars like medals and his rank like a weapon. His remaining eye studied the Macross Quarter's bridge with the assessment of someone who had fought more battles than most officers ever saw. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am General Martok of the Klingon Defense Force, commander of the 9th Fleet and veteran of more campaigns than your vessel has crew members. I watched your warriors destroy Dominion forces with a skill I have rarely seen outside my own people. I wish to speak with the one who commands these warriors, not the administrator who captains the vessel, but the one who leads them into battle. Wilder felt a flash of irritation at being dismissed as an administrator, but kept his expression neutral. Ozma arrived on the bridge at that moment, still in his flight suit with Skull Squadron patches visible, and Wilder made a command decision. Commander Ozma Lee, Skull Squadron leader, Wilder said, gesturing to his senior pilot. General Martok wants to speak with a warrior. That's your department. Ozma stepped forward, his combat veterans bearing immediately evident. He studied Martok through the view screen with the same assessing gaze the Klingon was directing at him. Two predators sizing each other up before deciding whether to fight or acknowledge mutual respect. General Martok, Ozma began, his tone carrying no deference but also no disrespect. I'm Commander Ozma Lee, SMS Skull Squadron. I lead 15 variable fighter pilots in combat operations. We've engaged the Vajra, insectoid aliens that attack in swarms numbering in the thousands. We've fought Zentradi battle pods piloted by genetically engineered warriors bred for combat. And yesterday, we destroyed Dominion forces that attacked without provocation. If you want to talk about battle, General, I've got stories that'll match yours drink for drink. For a moment, the bridge was silent. Then Martok threw back his head and laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Ha! Now this is a warrior. Not like the Federation officers who speak of honor but hide behind regulations and diplomacy. You speak plainly, you claim your victories without false modesty, and you meet my gaze as an equal. I like you, Commander Lee. The feeling's mutual, General. You don't waste time with political nonsense. You want to know if we'll share our technology so you can build better weapons to kill your enemies. No, Martok's response was immediate and firm. I want to know if your warriors are truly as skilled as they appeared, or if superior technology makes you appear more capable than you are. There is no honor in defeating enemies with weapons so advanced they cannot fight back. But there is great honor in facing a worthy opponent and prevailing through skill, courage, and tactical brilliance. Ozma's expression shifted from wary to genuinely interested. You want to test us? See if we can actually fight, or if we're just rich kids with expensive toys. Precisely. Martok grinned, showing teeth. I propose a training exercise. Your fighters against my pilots in simulated combat. No live weapons, honor rules only. First side to score 5 kills wins. If you are truly the warriors you appear to be, you will accept this challenge. If you are merely technicians hiding behind superior equipment, you will make excuses about protocols and regulations. Captain Wilder stepped forward, concerned about his pilots being challenged to what amounted to a duel. General Martok, my people are still recovering from our displacement here. We've been in combat situations for... Captain, with respect, Ozma interrupted, his eyes never leaving Martok's face. This is my call. The general just issued a direct challenge to Skull Squadron's competence. If we back down, every warrior culture in this quadrant will hear about it and assume we're cowards hiding behind fancy technology. And if you lose? Then we lose with honor, Ozma said simply. But I don't plan on losing. General Martok, your proposal interests me. But I have a counter-proposal, not just fighters against fighters. Make it more interesting. Mixed combat, your fighters, your pilots' skills, against our variable fighters and our combat doctrine. Best 3 out of 5 engagements. Loser buys drinks for the winner's squadron. Martok's remaining eye gleamed with fierce joy. Now you speak like a true warrior. I accept your terms, Commander Lee. But I warn you, my pilots have fought the Dominion, the Romulans, and the Borg. They are among the finest in the Klingon Defense Force. Then they'll finally have a challenge worth their time, Ozma shot back. When and where? Deep Space Nine has holodeck facilities that can simulate space combat, Martok replied. We meet there in 4 hours. That gives you time to prepare and my pilots time to study your fighter's basic capabilities from the sensor logs of your battle with the Dominion. I fight with honor, Commander, no ambushes, no unfair advantages. 4 hours. We'll be there. Ozma allowed himself a slight smile. And General? Bring enough latinum to cover drinks for my entire squadron. We don't drink cheap. Ha! I like you more with every word, Commander. 4 hours. Kapla. The transmission ended with Martok's battle cry still echoing across the bridge. Wilder turned to Ozma with an expression somewhere between exasperation and resignation. Did you just commit Skull Squadron to a combat exercise against Klingon pilots we know nothing about, with our technology fully exposed for analysis, because you got challenged to a fight? Pretty much, yeah, Ozma admitted without a trace of apology. Captain, trust me on this. Klingon respect strength and despise weakness. If we'd refused, they'd have written us off as another soft Federation ally. This way, we demonstrate capability, we earn their respect, and we potentially gain allies who actually understand military necessity. He's right, Captain, Luca called out from his station. I've been reading the cultural database entries on Klingon. Their entire society is built around warrior honor and personal combat. Refusing a challenge like this would be interpreted as cowardice, which would severely damage our diplomatic position with any honor-based culture. And we need allies, Ozma continued. The Federation means well, but they're bound by regulations and committees. The Cardassians want to exploit us. The Dominion wants to kill or capture us. The Klingon? They respect warriors who can fight. Win their respect, and we've got allies who'll actually stand with us in combat. Wilder sighed, recognizing the logic even as he worried about the risks. Fine. But Commander, you're betting Skull Squadron's reputation on this. Don't lose. Wasn't planning on it, sir. Ozma was already heading off the bridge. I need to brief the squadron and review those sensor logs of Klingon fighter tactics. We've got 4 hours to prepare for the most important training exercise of our careers. The holodeck on Deep Space Nine's habitat ring was the largest on the station, normally used for large-scale tactical simulations or recreational programs for off-duty crew. Chief O'Brien had spent the past 3 hours programming it to simulate open space combat conditions, complete with debris fields, asteroid clusters, and realistic sensor interference. A crowd had gathered in the observation gallery overlooking the holodeck control room. Word of the challenge had spread through the station's rumor network with the speed of a warp core breach, and everyone from Starfleet officers to civilian merchants wanted to watch the unknown warriors test themselves against Klingon combat veterans. Captain Sisko stood in the control room with Captain Wilder, General Martok, and several senior officers from all 3 factions. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, like the moment before a storm breaks. The rules are simple, Martok explained, gesturing to the tactical display. 5-on-5 fighter combat, simulated weapons only. First team to score 5 confirmed kills wins the match. We will fly 3 matches, 1 in open space, 1 in an asteroid field, and 1 near a planet with atmospheric interference. Best 2 out of 3 determines the overall victor. And the holodecks can accurately simulate our fighters' capabilities? Ozma asked from where he stood with his squadron. Alto Sautome, Michael Blanc, Luca Angeloni, and Clan Clang stood with him, all wearing their flight suits and carrying helmets. Chief O'Brien is the finest engineer in Starfleet, Sisko confirmed. He's programmed the holodeck with every detail of your fighter's performance we could extract from sensor logs. The simulation won't be perfect, but it'll be close enough for a fair test. And our fighters? Asked Captain Clag, Martok's subordinate and leader of the Klingon squadron. He was younger than Martok but carried himself with the confident aggression of someone who had proven himself in countless battles. Will they be accurately represented? Down to the last disruptor frequency, O'Brien confirmed. I pulled data from every engagement the IKS-CH Tang has participated in over the past year. Your fighter's maneuverability, weapons range, shield strength, it's all in there. Martok nodded approvingly. Then let us begin. Pilots, to your stations. The holodeck flickered to life, creating a convincing replica of open space with a distant star field and scattered debris from some long-ago battle. 5 holographic variable fighters appeared on one side of the combat zone, while 5 Klingon birds of prey, smaller single-pilot versions designed for fighter operations, materialized on the opposite side. Ozma's voice came through the comm system, calm and focused. Skull Squadron, this is lead. Remember your training. Klingon are aggressive fighters, they'll try to close range and overwhelm us with direct assault. Use transformation advantage. Make them chase angles they can't match. And for the love of all that's holy, don't let them outfly us. Alto, you're on point. Michael, cover his 6. Luca, run electronic warfare. Clan, sniper overwatch. I'll play roamer and respond to threats as they develop. Understood, lead, came the chorus of responses. On the Klingon side, Captain Clag's voice carried the aggressive confidence of a warrior eager for battle. Attack formation Delta. These aliens think their transforming ships give them advantage. Show them that Klingon warriors need no tricks, only courage and skill. For the Empire. Kapla. The simulation began. The Klingon fighters accelerated immediately into a straight-line assault formation, disruptors charging. It was textbook Klingon tactics, aggressive, direct, overwhelming force concentrated on a single point. Skull Squadron scattered. Alto's VF-25F Messiah transformed to Jerwalk mode mid-flight, legs deploying while maintaining forward thrust. He used the mode's superior maneuverability to execute a combat turn that violated every assumption about minimum turning radius, bringing his gun pod to bear on the lead Klingon fighter. Simulated rounds tore through the holographic shields, scoring the first kill in 14 seconds. Skull 1, kill confirmed, O'Brien's voice announced clinically. Klingon Fighter 1 eliminated. The Klingon formation didn't falter. They adapted instantly, breaking into pairs and trying to flank the variable fighters from multiple angles. But Michael Blanc was already there, his VF-25G transforming to Batroid mode and using the mech configuration's precision targeting to score a hit on Klingon Fighter 3 before it could complete its flanking maneuver. Skull 3, kill confirmed. Score, SMS-2, Klingon 0. Clag's voice carried fury and grudging respect. They fight like no opponent I have seen. Forget formations, free engagement. Hunt them as individual prey. The combat devolved into a chaotic furball as both sides abandoned tactical formations for individual dueling. Clan Klang's sniper configuration VF-25G stayed at maximum range, her beam rifle scoring precise hits whenever a Klingon fighter committed to an attack run. Luca used his electronic warfare systems to spoof targeting solutions, causing Klingon weapons to miss by critical centimeters. But the Klingon were adapting. They might not have transformation technology, but they had centuries of combat experience and an instinctive understanding of three-dimensional tactics. One Klingon pilot, a female named Bitor who Martok later identified as one of his finest, managed to anticipate Alto's transformation pattern and caught him mid-shift with a perfectly timed disruptor burst. Klingon Fighter 2, kill confirmed. Score, SMS-2, Klingon 1. The battle raged for another 6 minutes of brutal, unrelenting combat. Transformations, evasions, targeting solutions, and countermaneuvers blurred together. In the observation gallery, the watching crowd had gone completely silent, mesmerized by the display of skill on both sides. When the simulation ended with SMS scoring the 5th kill, Ozma catching the last Klingon fighter in a perfectly executed high-G turn that would have killed an unenhanced pilot, the final score was SMS 5, Klingon 2. But it had been close, far closer than the number suggested. In the holodeck control room, Martok studied the tactical replay with the intense focus of someone analyzing a worthy opponent. Your warriors are skilled, Commander Lee. Very skilled. But let us see how they perform in more complex terrain. Activate Match 2. Asteroid Field Combat. The second match was harder. The Klingon used the asteroids for cover and ambush tactics, their natural aggression channeled into coordinated pack hunting. Skull Squadron won again, but this time the score was 5-4, and it came down to a final duel between Ozma and Captain Clag that lasted over 2 minutes of intense maneuvering through asteroid clusters. By the third match, atmospheric combat near a gas giant with severe electromagnetic interference. Both sides were reading each other's tactics and adapting in real time. The Klingon had learned to anticipate transformation patterns. Skull Squadron had learned to exploit the slight delay in Klingon weapons tracking. The final match ended in a draw at 5-5, with both sides running out of simulated ammunition simultaneously and O'Brien declaring a tactical stalemate. When the pilots emerged from the holodeck, both groups were exhausted, sweating, and grinning with the satisfaction of warriors who had found worthy opponents. Martok approached Ozma directly, and for a moment, the entire observation gallery held its breath. Then the Klingon general seized Ozma's forearm in the traditional warrior's grip. You fight with honor, Commander Lee. Your squadron's skill equals any Klingon unit I have seen. The score is 2 victories for your warriors, 1 draw, and 1, I believe the term is, moral victory, for my pilots who held you to a stalemate in the final match. By Klingon tradition, this makes you worthy of respect and, if you are willing, potential allies. Ozma returned the grip firmly. General, your pilots pushed us harder than anything except actual Vajra swarms. That last match. If it had been real combat with live weapons, I'm not sure who would have walked away. That's the definition of worthy opponents. Then we shall drink together. Martok declared. Not as Federation allies doing political duty, but as warriors who have tested each other in simulated combat and found mutual respect. Captain Wilder, Commander Lee, you and your pilots are invited to the CH Tang for blood wine and honest conversation. No politics, no intelligence gathering, just warriors sharing stories of battles fought and enemies vanquished. Captain Wilder, watching from the control room, felt something shift in the diplomatic landscape. This wasn't an alliance forged through treaties and negotiations. This was respect earned through demonstration of capability. In its own way, it was far more powerful. General Martok, Wilder said formally, Skull Squadron would be honored to drink with your warriors. Though I should warn you, if Commander Lee gets drunk, he starts telling embarrassing stories about me from flight school. Martok laughed again, that booming sound that seemed to fill every space he occupied. Then tonight will be educational as well as enjoyable. Come, my ship awaits, and the blood wine will not drink itself. As the group moved toward the docking bays, Sisko found himself standing next to Wilder. The two captains watched their respective officers, SMS pilots and Klingon warriors, already trading exaggerated combat stories and arguing good-naturedly about who had scored which kills. That, Sisko said quietly, was probably the most effective piece of diplomacy I've seen in this sector in months. No formal agreements, no treaties, just mutual recognition of competence. Martok will report this to the Klingon High Council, and suddenly you'll have an entire warrior empire that respects you. Is that good or bad? Wilder asked. Good. Very good. Because when the Dominion comes back, and they will come back, you'll want allies who fight based on honor and respect, not politics and calculation. The Federation will help you because it's the right thing to do. But the Klingon? They'll help you because you earned it. Wilder watched Ozma demonstrate a transformation maneuver to a fascinated Klingon pilot using hand gestures and sound effects. Here's hoping we can get home before we need to cash in that goodwill. Though I have a feeling we're going to be here longer than anyone wants. Then you'll need those allies, Captain. Trust me on this, in the Alpha Quadrant, there's no such thing as too many friends when the Dominion is involved. As the SMS and Klingon personnel headed off for what promised to be a legendary drinking session, neither captain noticed the small figure in civilian clothes watching from a shadowed alcove. The figure noted the growing alliance between SMS and the Klingon, recorded details of the variable fighter's combat capabilities, and then disappeared into the crowds of Deep Space Nine's promenade. The Obsidian Order had learned years ago that the best intelligence came not from covert infiltration, but from simply watching and listening when warriors thought they were safe among friends. And tonight, those warriors would drink, celebrate, and undoubtedly reveal far more than they ever would to a direct interrogation. Chief Miles O'Brien had been an engineer for over 20 years, had rebuilt Cardassian systems to Federation specifications, had jury-rigged solutions to problems that would make Academy instructors weep, and had once kept Deep Space Nine's reactor from going critical using nothing but a plasma torch and sheer stubborn determination. But staring at the fold drive's internal architecture made him feel like a first-year cadet confronting quantum mechanics for the first time. Right, he said slowly, studying the holographic schematic Luca Angeloni had projected in engineering. So this crystalline matrix here, the fold quartz, it's not just a power conduit or a focusing element. It's actually creating a localized bubble of what you call superdimension space by resonating at specific quantum frequencies that don't exist in our universe. Exactly. Luca's enthusiasm for technical discussion momentarily overcame his exhaustion from the previous day's Klingon training exercise. The fold quartz acts as both catalyst and stabilizer. When energized properly, it creates a dimensional interface that allows the ship to transition from normal four-dimensional spacetime into superdimension space, which exists as a higher-dimensional framework overlaying conventional reality. Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax, who had been analyzing the schematics with the focused intensity of someone with 8 lifetimes of scientific curiosity, looked up from her tricorder. But if superdimension space doesn't exist in our universe, and our preliminary scans suggest it doesn't, then the fold quartz can't create the necessary resonance pattern. It would be like trying to tune a radio to a frequency that doesn't exist. That's the problem, Luca confirmed, highlighting sections of the damaged matrix on the holographic display. These fractures here, and here, they happened because the fold quartz tried to maintain resonance with superdimension space that wasn't there during our dimensional transition. The crystal structure literally tore itself apart trying to connect to something that no longer existed relative to our position. O'Brien rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. So we can't just replicate new fold quartz because our replicators can't create the dimensional properties it needs. And we can't repair the existing crystal because the fractures go down to the quantum level. Which means you're stuck here unless we can find a way to either recreate superdimension space locally or completely rebuild your FTL drive using principles that work in our universe. The second option would take years, Luca said quietly. And require completely redesigning the quarter's power systems, navigation systems, and structural reinforcement. We'd essentially be building a new ship. Which leaves option 1, Dax said thoughtfully. Recreate superdimension space. Or at least simulate it well enough that your fold drive thinks it exists. She pulled up additional data on her PADD. Miles, what do we know about artificial wormholes? The Bajoran wormhole connects 2 points in normal space, but it does so by creating a tunnel through subspace. Could we create something similar but tuned to match superdimension space frequencies? Jadzia, we barely understand how the Bajoran wormhole works, and that was created by beings who exist outside linear time. Creating an artificial wormhole from scratch would require energy levels we can't generate and physics we don't fully understand. O'Brien paused, then grudgingly added, but, maybe we don't need to create a full wormhole. Just a localized dimensional anomaly that mimics superdimension space long enough for the full drive to lock on and generate its own field. Luca's eyes widened. Like priming a pump. We create a temporary superdimension pocket using your technology. The fold drive uses that pocket to bootstrap its own field generation, and once the fold bubble is stable, we can complete the jump. In theory, O'Brien cautioned. But we'd need to precisely match the dimensional frequencies of superdimension space, which we can't measure directly because it doesn't exist here. We'd be guessing based on residual signatures from your damaged fold quartz. Not guessing, Dax corrected with a slight smile. Extrapolating from incomplete data using advanced theoretical physics and desperate creativity. There's a difference. Is there? O'Brien muttered, but he was already pulling up subspace field equations on his own terminal. Right. We'll need to modify the Defiance deflector array to generate a precisely tuned subspace bubble. Luca, I'll need complete specifications on superdimension space's dimensional properties. Frequency, amplitude, quantum signature, everything your damaged crystal can tell us. I can provide that, Luca confirmed. But Chief, there's a complication. Even if we successfully create a temporary superdimension pocket and prime the fold drive, we still need to repair the dimensional stabilizers. Without them, the fold bubble could collapse mid-transit, which would, he trailed off, face going pale. Which would what? O'Brien asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Dimensional collapse during fold transit would tear the quarter apart at the molecular level. Everyone aboard would be scattered across multiple dimensions simultaneously. You'd be alive and dead, here and not here, existing in quantum superposition without any way to collapse back into a single state. The engineering bay fell silent as the implications sank in. Dax was the first to speak, her voice carrying the gravity of someone who had witnessed friends die in horrible ways. Then we fix the stabilizers first, before we attempt any dimensional field tests. No shortcuts, no acceptable risks. This isn't just about getting your ship home, Lieutenant, it's about not creating a dimensional catastrophe that could destabilize subspace in this entire sector. Before anyone could respond, Captain Wilder's voice came through the comm system. Engineering, this is the captain. We've got a situation developing in ops. I need Lieutenant Angeloni up here immediately. Luca exchanged worried glances with O'Brien and Dax, then headed for the turbolift at a run. The chief engineer and science officer followed close behind, their technical discussion temporarily suspended in favor of whatever crisis had just emerged. Deep Space Nine's ops was in a state of controlled chaos when they arrived. Captain Sisko stood at the central situation table with Major Kira and Captain Wilder, all three studying a tactical display that showed a region of space approximately 3 light-years from the station. What's happened? Dax asked immediately, moving to her science station. Long-range sensors detected a massive spatial distortion approximately 40 minutes ago, Sisko explained without looking up from the display. Initial analysis suggested it was similar to the dimensional rift that brought the Macross Quarter through. But the energy signatures don't match exactly, they're related, but different. Wilder's expression was tense. Lieutenant Angeloni, take a look at these readings. Does that signature match anything from our universe? Any known fold technology or dimensional phenomena? Luca moved to a secondary console and pulled up the sensor data. His fingers flew across the controls, running comparative analysis against SMS technical databases. Then his face went pale. Oh no, he breathed. Captain, that's not a fold signature. It's a dimension eater. Every person in ops turned to stare at him. Sisko spoke first, his voice carefully controlled. Lieutenant, please explain what a dimension eater is and why you look like you just saw a ghost. Dimension eaters are, their entropy manifestations, Luca explained, his academic precision failing under stress. They're not alive in any conventional sense, but they consume dimensional stability. They appeared in our universe about 15 years ago during the Vajra conflict. We think they're somehow connected to fold technology or superdimension space manipulation. Wherever they appear, they create zones where the laws of physics start breaking down. Matter-energy conversions become unstable, causality gets weird, and if they're not stopped, they eventually consume entire star systems. And one just appeared near Deep Space Nine, Kira said flatly. Wonderful. How do we stop it? You can't, Lucas said miserably. Not with your technology. Dimension eaters are immune to conventional weapons because they exist partially outside normal spacetime. In our universe, we use specialized fold bombs, weapons that create localized superdimension space collapses that disrupt their dimensional interface. But those require fold technology, which doesn't work here, and even if it did, we don't have any fold bombs aboard the quarter. Dax was already running analysis on her science station. I'm detecting spatial distortions consistent with what Lieutenant Angeloni described. Whatever this thing is, it's moving toward the Bajran system at sublight speeds. Current trajectory suggests it will reach the wormhole in approximately 18 hours. The wormhole, Cisco repeated quietly, and everyone in Ops understood the implications immediately. The Bajran wormhole was unique in known space, a stable artificial wormhole created by beings the Bajorans called the Prophets. It connected the Alpha and Gamma quadrants, making it strategically vital. If a Dimension Eater reached the wormhole, we need to evacuate the system, Kira said immediately. Get every civilian transport moving, contact Bajorans and warn them to prepare for planetary evacuation if necessary. We won't have time, Dax interrupted, her voice carrying absolute certainty. If this Dimension Eater behaves according to Lieutenant Angeloni's description, the spatial disruption field will expand exponentially as it approaches high-energy phenomena like the wormhole. By the time we fully evacuated Bajorans, 6 million people, the disruption field would already encompass half the system. Captain Wilder turned to Luca with desperate intensity. There has to be a way. You said fold bombs work against these things. Can we build one? Improvise something using Deep Space Nine's resources? Maybe. Luca's mind was racing, analyzing possibilities with the same focused intensity he'd used designing variable fighter upgrades. A fold bomb works by creating a superdimension space collapse that disrupts the Dimension Eater's quantum coherence. We can't create true superdimension space, but Chief O'Brien and I were just discussing using the Defiance deflector to simulate it for the fold drive. If we modified that approach, amplified the field strength by several orders of magnitude, and detonated it inside the Dimension Eater's disruption field. It might work, O'Brien finished, immediately seeing where Luca was going. But we'd need to generate a subspace field powerful enough to fake superdimension space properties across several cubic kilometers of space. That would require power levels we don't have. Yes we do, Wilder said quietly. The Macross Quarter's main reactor. It generates enough power to fire the Macross cannon, a weapon that can vaporize capital ships. If we rerouted that power through the Defiance modified deflector array. Cisco was already nodding. We'd have enough power to generate the field Lieutenant Angeloni is describing. But there's a problem. Connecting two completely different power generation systems in less than 18 hours. Chief, is that even possible? O'Brien's expression cycled through doubt, calculation, and grim determination. It's insane. The Quarter's fusion reactor uses dimensional reinforcement principles that don't match our antimatter containment systems. We'd need to build interface hardware from scratch, calibrate power flow to prevent cascade failures, and somehow convince two incompatible technologies to work together perfectly on the first try. So that's a yes, Kira said with the barest hint of a smile. That's a maybe if we're lucky and I don't sleep for the next 17 hours, O'Brien corrected. Captain Cisco, I'll need every engineer on the station working on this. And Captain Wilder, I'll need complete access to your reactor systems and permission to modify them in ways that will probably violate every safety protocol you have. You have it, Wilder confirmed immediately. Whatever you need, Chief. Luca, you're assigned to work with Chief O'Brien directly. This is your expertise, make it work. There's another problem, Dax interjected. Even if we successfully build this weapon, someone has to deliver it directly into the Dimension Eater's disruption field. Our sensors can barely penetrate that field, which means automated delivery is unreliable. We'll need a pilot skilled enough to navigate through spatial distortions that will make instruments useless and crazy enough to fly directly into a phenomenon that consumes dimensional stability. Every eye in Ops turned to Wilder. The SMS captain closed his eyes briefly, knowing exactly what was being asked and who would volunteer before the question was even posed. I'll talk to Commander Lee, Wilder said quietly. But you all know he's going to volunteer immediately. Skull Squadron doesn't back down from dangerous missions. This isn't dangerous, Captain, Dax said gently. This is potentially suicidal. The pilot who flies into that disruption field might not make it out. Then we better make damn sure they do, O'Brien said with fierce determination. Because I'm not building a weapon that kills the pilot who delivers it. Lieutenant Angeloni, let's go, we've got 17 hours to perform an engineering miracle. As the engineers headed out, Cisco pulled Wilder aside. Captain, I know Commander Lee is your friend and your best pilot. But make sure he understands what he's volunteering for. The Dimension Eater's disruption field will affect his fighter in ways we can't predict. Transformation systems might fail. Weapons might not work. He could get trapped in there with no way out. Benjamin, I've sent Ozma on suicide missions before, Wilder said quietly. He always comes back. Sometimes I think he's too stubborn to die. But you're right, he needs to know what he's flying into. He headed toward the Macross Quarter's docking port, already composing the conversation in his mind. How do you tell someone who's like a brother that you need him to fly into impossible danger one more time? How do you ask someone to risk dimensional dissolution when you can't even fully explain what that means? But before he reached the airlock, Ozma's voice came through his comm badge. Captain, this is Lee. I'm in the quarters briefing room with Alto, Michael, Luca's technical notes, and a really bad feeling. Please tell me we're not about to do something monumentally stupid. Despite everything, Wilder smiled slightly. Commander, meet me in the briefing room. And yes, we're about to do something monumentally stupid. But if it works, we'll save approximately 6 million Bajorans and preserve the most strategically important wormhole in known space. So just another Tuesday, Ozma replied dryly. I'll get the coffee started. Something tells me we're going to need it. 17 hours later, Chief O'Brien stood in the Defiance engineering section surrounded by jury-rigged power conduits, modified deflector control systems, and enough improvised hardware to make a Starfleet safety inspector resign in protest. His hands were covered in plasma burns, his uniform was filthy, and he'd been awake for nearly 40 hours straight. And he'd never been more proud of an engineering solution in his entire career. Power flow is stable, reported Ensign Nog, who had proven invaluable during the installation despite his youth. The young Ferengi had learned engineering from O'Brien himself and had inherited his mentor's talent for making impossible solutions work. Macross Quarter reactor is feeding power through the interface hardware at 93% efficiency. Deflector array modifications are holding stable. All diagnostic systems show green across the board. Luca Angeloni monitored the dimensional field generator, a device that had existed only in theoretical physics papers 18 hours ago and now represented their only chance of stopping the Dimension Eater. Superdimension space simulation protocols are loaded. When we activate the deflector array, it'll generate a subspace field that mimics superdimension space dimensional properties for approximately 47 seconds before power drain forces shut down. 47 seconds, O'Brien repeated. Will that be enough time for the field to disrupt the Dimension Eater? According to SMS combat data from our universe, fold bomb detonations require sustained field exposure for 30 to 45 seconds to completely disrupt a Dimension Eater's quantum coherence. So, maybe we're literally inventing new physics here, Chief. I can't give you certainties. Maybe beats definitely dying, O'Brien muttered. Right. Bridge, this is engineering. The weapon is ready. All systems show optimal performance. We're as prepared as we're going to get. Inside the cockpit, Ozma Lee ran through pre-flight checks with the methodical precision of someone who had done this thousands of times before. Skull Leader to Defiant, he transmitted. All systems nominal. I'm ready when you are. Alto Sayatom's voice came through the Squadron channel from where Skull Squadron maintained defensive positions around DS9. Ozma, you don't have to do this alone. Let me fly wingman, we've always fought together. Negative, Alto. The disruption field will affect instrument systems unpredictably. Multiple fighters would just increase the chance of collision or confusion. Besides, Ozma's voice softened slightly. Someone needs to be around to tell embarrassing stories about me if this goes sideways. You're better at that than anyone. That's not funny, Ozma. Wasn't trying to be funny, kid. Just realistic. Ozma watched his sensors as the Defiant accelerated toward the Dimension Eater's position. Defiant, Skull Leader is moving to escort position. Let's go kill a physics anomaly. The Dimension Eater had grown significantly in the past 18 hours. What had started as a relatively small spatial distortion now encompassed nearly 1,000 cubic kilometers of space, and its disruption field was clearly visible even to the naked eye, a roiling mass of distorted spacetime that made stars behind it shimmer and twist like reflections in disturbed water. Sensors are already showing degradation, Dax reported from her science station. The disruption field is interfering with our scanning systems. Commander Lee, once you enter that field, we won't be able to track you reliably. You'll be on your own. Story of my life, Ozma replied. I'm used to it. They crossed into the outer edge of the disruption field, and immediately every instrument on the Defiant screamed warnings. Spatial distortions. Temporal fluctuations. Quantum uncertainty spikes. The Dimension Eater was consuming reality itself, breaking down the fundamental laws that made existence possible. Ozma's fighter bucked as conflicting gravitational fields grabbed at it. His transformation systems flickered as dimensional instability affected the energy conversion armor. But he maintained course, using manual control and pilot instinct to navigate through distortions that made sensor readings meaningless. I'm at optimal deployment range, he transmitted. Defiant, you're clear to activate the weapon. Acknowledged, Cisco replied. Chief, power up the deflector array. Let's see if this works. The Macross Quarter's reactor, connected through kilometers of improvised conduits to the Defiant's deflector array, fed power into the modified system. The deflector array generated a subspace field that mimicked superdimension space dimensional properties, a pale imitation of the real thing, but close enough to trick reality for 47 seconds. The Dimension Eater reacted immediately. The artificial superdimension field disrupted its quantum coherence, causing the disruption field to fluctuate wildly. Spacetime twisted in impossible configurations as two incompatible dimensional frameworks tried to occupy the same location. It's working. Luca shouted from engineering. The Dimension Eater's quantum signature is destabilizing. But the power drain is higher than projected. We've got maybe 30 seconds before the reactor safety's force shutdown. Ozma watched his instruments flicker and die as the competing dimensional fields turned his cockpit into a light show of impossible physics. Matter and energy fluctuated. Time seemed to flow backward and forward simultaneously. He existed in multiple states at once, here and not here, alive and dead, real and unreal. And through it all, he held his position, trusting his fighter's systems and O'Brien's engineering to hold together long enough to finish the job. The Dimension Eater's disruption field began to collapse. The spatial distortions diminished. The quantum uncertainty that had been consuming reality started to resolve back into normal spacetime as the entity's dimensional interface failed. Field collapse confirmed. Dax announced. The Dimension Eater is dissipating. Whatever we did, it worked. Skull Leader, get out of there now. Alto's voice cut through the calm, urgent with concern. The dimensional fields are still unstable. You need to clear the area before. The transmission cut off as one final surge of dimensional energy rippled through the collapsing disruption field. Ozma's fighter vanished from sensors, swallowed by a cascade of failing quantum coherence. Ozma. Alto's voice was raw. Ozma, respond. Skull Leader, do you copy? Silence answered from the collapsing Dimension Eater's former location. The older pilot's fighter was tumbling slowly, systems clearly damaged but intact. Alto grabbed the disabled craft with his Batroid's manipulators and began towing it back toward DS9. I've got him, Alto transmitted. He's alive, I'm reading life signs. Fighter took heavy damage from the dimensional collapse, but it held together. Ozma, if you can hear me, you better wake up soon because I'm never letting you forget how I had to rescue you. A weak transmission crackled through the static. Noted, kid. Add it to the list of embarrassing stories. Ow. Everything hurts. Did we get it? We got it, Alto confirmed, relief obvious in his voice. You flew into a Dimension Eater and came back out. That's going in the record books. Great. Just what I always wanted. To be famous for being crazy enough to fly into impossible physics. Captain Wilder is going to kill me. On the Defiance Bridge, Sisko allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to practical matters. Chief, shut down the deflector array and disconnect from the quarter's reactor. Damage assessment on all systems. And someone get medical teams to the quarter's docking bay, Commander Lee is going to need attention. Aye, Captain, O'Brien replied, already working to safely power down systems that were never meant to work together in the first place. For what it's worth, sir, this was one of the most insane engineering solutions I've ever implemented. And it actually worked. That seems to be becoming a pattern around here, Sisko said with a slight smile. Well done, Chief. Well done, everyone. Now let's make sure Commander Lee survives long enough to tell the story. As the Defiant and Variable fighters returned to DS9, Captain Wilder stood in the Macross Quarter's observation deck, watching his second-in-command being helped out of his damaged fighter. Ozma was alive, the Dimension Eater was gone, and they had just saved millions of lives using improvised physics and desperate courage. But Wilder couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. They had been in this universe less than a week, and they'd already fought the Dominion, earned Klingon respect, and destroyed a Dimension Eater using technology that shouldn't work. What would the second week bring? The conference room on Deep Space Nine was crowded with more people than it had ever been designed to hold. Representatives from 3 factions sat around the table or stood against the walls, each bringing their own perspective on what had just happened, and what it meant. Captain Sisko sat at the head of the table with Major Kira and Dax flanking him. Captain Wilder occupied the opposite end with Ozma Lee, freshly released from medical with minor radiation burns and a concussion, and Luca Angeloni beside him. General Martok stood rather than sat, his imposing presence filling one entire side of the room. And via secure subspace link, 3 holographic figures shimmered into view. Admiral William Ross of Starfleet Command, Chancellor Gowron of the Klingon High Council, and unexpectedly, a Vorta administrator named Weyoun. The Vorta's presence drew immediate hostile reactions. Kira's hand moved instinctively toward her phaser. Martok's expression became murderous. Even Sisko's diplomatic composure showed cracks. Captain Sisko, Weyoun began with his characteristic unsettling smile, please, there's no need for alarm. The founders have authorized me to participate in this discussion as an observer only. What occurred with the dimensional anomaly concerns all parties in this quadrant, regardless of our current, political disagreements. The founders can observe all they want from the Gamma Quadrant, Martok growled. This is Alpha Quadrant business. Is it? Weian's smile never wavered. An entity that consumes dimensional stability appeared without warning and nearly destroyed the Bajorn wormhole. The only stable connection between quadrants. That affects Dominion interests significantly. We merely wish to understand what happened and ensure it doesn't happen again. Admiral Ross's holographic form leaned forward. Weian has a point, much as it pains me to admit it. Captain Sisko, your report indicated that this Dimension Eater originated from the same dimensional framework as the Macross Quarter. We need to understand the full implications of having a vessel from another universe operating in our space. With respect, Admiral, Captain Wilder interjected, his voice carrying controlled frustration, the Dimension Eater wasn't something we brought with us intentionally. These entities appear spontaneously in regions where dimensional boundaries are weak or where fold technology has been extensively used. Our arrival may have weakened the dimensional barriers in this region, but we didn't create that thing deliberately. Intentional or not, the result is the same, Weian observed. Your presence represents a destabilizing influence on the fabric of reality itself. The founders are quite concerned about what other dimensional phenomena might emerge as a result of your continued presence in this universe. Then perhaps the founders should have thought of that before attacking us without provocation, Ozma said coldly. We defended ourselves against Dominion aggression. We helped Deep Space Nine fight off your forces. And we just saved this entire system from dimensional collapse. So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about the founders' anxieties. Chancellor Gowron's holographic form showed fierce approval. Well spoken, warrior. The Dominion fears what it cannot control or understand. This is weakness, not wisdom. Captain Wilder, General Martok has reported to the High Council about your warrior's skill and honor. The Klingon Empire stands ready to provide assistance in repairing your vessel, should you require it. Chancellor, that's a generous offer, Admiral Ross said carefully, but Starfleet has already committed resources to assisting the Macross Quarter's repairs. We don't need to turn this into a competition between allies. Everything is competition, Admiral, Gowron replied. The question is whether we compete as rivals or as allies working toward mutual goals. I prefer the latter, but I will accept either. Sisko raised his hands, recognizing the conversation was about to deteriorate into political posturing. Gentlemen, with respect, we're losing focus. The immediate crisis has been resolved, but we need to address the larger implications. Lieutenant Angeloni, you said Dimension Eaters appear in regions where dimensional boundaries are weak. Can you elaborate on that? Luca pulled up a holographic display showing dimensional physics data. In our universe, Dimension Eaters typically appear in areas where fold technology has been extensively used or where dimensional barriers have been damaged by warfare. They're essentially entropy manifestations, pockets of dimensional instability that consume ordered reality and convert it into chaos. We've fought them before, but always in our own universe where superdimension space physics apply. But this Dimension Eater appeared here, in a universe without superdimension space, Dax observed. Which suggests that your arrival created a weak point in our dimensional barriers. The question is whether that weak point will heal naturally or if it represents a permanent vulnerability. And whether more of these entities will come through, Kira added grimly. We barely stopped one with improvised weapons and desperate tactics. If a dozen appear simultaneously, we won't have time to jury-rig solutions for each one. Weian's expression became thoughtful. This presents an interesting dilemma. The Macross Quarter's presence creates dimensional vulnerabilities that threaten all parties. Yet the Macross Quarter also possesses the expertise to combat the entities that exploit those vulnerabilities. Destroying the vessel would eliminate the source of the problem but also eliminate the solution. The founders will not destroy them, Martok stated flatly. Not while the Klingon Empire has declared them honorable warriors worthy of protection. And not while Starfleet has committed to assisting their return home, Admiral Ross added firmly. But Weyoun raises a valid point. We need to understand the long-term implications of the Quarter's presence. Lieutenant Angeloni, in your professional opinion, what's the best course of action? Luca looked at Captain Wilder, silently asking permission to speak openly. Wilder nodded, and the young engineer took a deep breath before addressing the assembled powers. Admiral, the honest answer is that we don't fully understand the dimensional physics involved in our arrival here. In theory, once our full drive is repaired and we successfully transition back to our home universe, the dimensional weak point should stabilize. Our presence is maintaining an active connection between universes. Once we leave, that connection should close naturally. In theory, Sisko repeated. But you can't guarantee it. No sir, I cannot. Dimensional physics isn't an exact science even in our universe where we've been studying it for decades. Here, where the fundamental laws are different, I'm operating on educated guesses and theoretical models that may or may not apply. Chancellor Gowron's image showed approval despite the uncertainty. At least the boy is honest. Better honest uncertainty than false confidence. Captain Wilder, the Klingon Empire supports your efforts to return home. Whatever resources we can provide, you shall have them. Starfleet concurs, Admiral Ross said. Captain Sisko, coordinate with Captain Wilder's engineering team. Priority authorization for any resources needed. And Captain Wilder, I know this isn't your fight, but while you're here, Starfleet would appreciate your continued cooperation against Dominion forces. Your combat capabilities are impressive. We'll defend ourselves if attacked, Wilder replied carefully. But Admiral, SMS is a private military contractor with specific contractual obligations. We're not in the business of fighting other people's wars unless there's a formal agreement in place. Right now, our only goal is repairing our ship and getting home to our own conflicts. A mercenary's answer, Weyoun observed, though his tone carried no judgment. Honest, at least. The Founders appreciate pragmatism, Captain. Perhaps when you grow tired of the Federation's restrictive regulations and the Klingon obsession with honor, you might consider discussing terms with the Dominion. We compensate well for valuable services. The room erupted. Martok roared something in Klingon that the universal translator wisely declined to interpret. Kira's hand actually reached her phaser. Sisko's expression promised violence if Weyoun continued that line of discussion. But Ozma simply laughed, a dark, humorless sound. Weyoun, I've read the intelligence reports on your Dominion. Genetically engineered soldiers addicted to drugs that ensure loyalty. Cloned administrators programmed for obedience. Shapeshifter founders who consider themselves gods. You want to hire us? Here's my counterproposal, take your offer and shove it directly into the nearest black hole. SMS might be contractors, but we choose our employers carefully. We don't work for slavers. Weyoun's smile finally faltered. Commander, I assure you the Dominion is not. Save it, Wilder interrupted coldly. Commander Lee speaks for SMS on this matter. We're not interested in Dominion employment, now or ever. Is there anything else productive to discuss, or can we end this meeting and get back to actual work? Admiral Ross looked like he was suppressing a smile. I think that covers everything for now, Captain. Sisko, keep me informed of any developments. And Captain Wilder, thank you for your assistance with the Dimension Eater. Starfleet owes you one. The holograms faded, leaving the physical participants in the conference room. The tension remained, but it was a different kind now, the tension of people who had survived a crisis together and were trying to figure out what came next. That went well, Kira said dryly. We've managed to alienate the Dominion even further, if that's possible. They were already trying to kill us, Ozma pointed out. Hard to alienate someone more than that. At least now they know we won't be bribed or intimidated. Martok clapped Ozma on the shoulder with enough force to stagger a less resilient human. Well spoken, warrior. You reject false offers of alliance and state your position clearly. This is how Klingon conduct diplomacy. I like you more each day, Commander Lee. The feeling's mutual, General. Though you Klingon could work on your definition of gentle pats on the back. I think you just bruised something important. If it bruises easily, it wasn't important. Martok laughed. Captain Wilder, Captain Sisko, I must return to my ship. But know this, the Klingon Empire considers SMS warriors to be valuable allies. When the time comes that you need warriors who understand honor and aren't afraid of battle, you call us. We will answer. After Martok departed, still laughing about something in Klingon, Sisko turned to Wilder with a more serious expression. Captain, I appreciate what you and your people have done. But I need to ask, what are your actual intentions? You say you want to go home, and I believe you. But while you're here, you're a wild card. You've got technology that intimidates the Dominion, combat skills that impress the Klingon, and you're sitting in one of the most strategically important locations in the Quadrant. People are going to have expectations. Wilder stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the Macross Quarter docked beside Deep Space Nine. Captain Sisko, I'll be completely honest with you. SMS exists because humanity in my universe learned that survival sometimes requires pragmatic decisions. We're not idealists like the Federation. We're not warriors seeking glory like the Klingon. We're professionals who understand that protecting civilians and maintaining stability requires military capability that civilian governments can't always provide efficiently. He turned back to face Sisko. But that doesn't mean we're immoral. We choose our contracts carefully. We don't work for tyrants, slavers, or genocidal regimes. And right now, even though I didn't ask to be here and don't want to be involved in your war, I'm practical enough to recognize reality. The Dominion will keep trying to capture or destroy us. The Cardassians will keep trying to steal our technology. We need allies, and the Federation and Klingon are the best options available. So you'll help us fight the Dominion? Kira asked. We'll defend ourselves and assist allies when attacked, Wilder clarified. But I won't commit SMS to offensive operations or long-term military campaigns. We're not mercenaries for hire, Major, we're survivors trying to get home. If helping you survive helps us survive, then our interests align. It's pragmatic alliance, not ideological commitment. Sisko nodded slowly. I can work with that. Honest self-interest is easier to navigate than false altruism. And Captain, for what it's worth, I understand your position. You're responsible for your crew's safety in a universe where you don't know all the rules or the players. Making careful decisions is the smart move. Thank you, Captain. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to check on our engineering progress. The sooner we can repair the fold drive, the sooner we can stop being a dimensional weak point in your universe. As the SMS officers departed, Dax moved to stand beside Sisko at the viewport. Benjamin, do you trust them? I trust that they'll act according to their stated interests, Sisko replied. Which, fortunately, currently align with ours. But Dax, keep monitoring dimensional stability in this region. If more Dimension Eaters appear, or if the Quarter's presence starts causing other problems, we need to know immediately. Already on it, Dax confirmed. Though I have to admit, part of me hopes they stay long enough for me to finish studying their fold technology. The physics implications are fascinating. Jadzia, you would say that about a black hole that was about to consume you. Well, it would be fascinating, Dax said with a slight smile. Right up until the event horizon. In the Macross Quarter's engineering section, Chief O'Brien and Luca Angeloni stood before the damaged fold drive, studying repair schedules and resource requirements with the grim determination of people facing an impossible task with inadequate tools. 3 weeks minimum, O'Brien said, reviewing the latest projections. And that's assuming we can fabricate replacement components that match your specifications. Some of these materials. The fold carbon composites, the dimensional stabilizer crystals, I'm not sure our replicators can produce them even with your complete technical data. They can't, Luca admitted. Not directly. But we might be able to synthesize analogs, materials that aren't exactly fold carbon but have similar enough properties to function temporarily. It won't be as reliable as proper components, but it might hold together long enough for one fold jump home. Might, O'Brien repeated. Lieutenant, I've built my career on might and maybe, but this is pushing even my comfort level. If those analog components fail during fold transition, everyone dies horribly across multiple dimensions, Luca finished quietly. I know, Chief. But it's either risk that or stay here permanently. And staying here permanently means we're a perpetual dimensional weak point that might spawn more dimension eaters. O'Brien rubbed his eyes, exhaustion catching up with him. Right. So we're building a dimensional drive that might kill everyone aboard using materials that might work, and we're doing it in less than 3 weeks. Just another day in Deep Space Nine engineering. Chief O'Brien, Luca said seriously, I want you to know that I understand what you're risking by helping us. If the fold drive fails catastrophically during testing, it could damage DS9 or even create a dimensional rupture that affects the entire system. You're putting your station and your people at risk for strangers from another universe. That's not something SMS takes lightly. Lieutenant, 6 years ago, I was stationed on the Enterprise when we encountered beings from outside our galaxy who wanted to destroy all humanoid life. We stopped them, but only because people took risks that shouldn't have worked. That's what Starfleet does, we take impossible risks to save people, even strangers we just met. You're not strangers anymore. You're the people who saved this station from a dimension eater. That makes you crew, in my book. Luca felt something tighten in his chest, a warmth he hadn't expected from people in an alien universe. Thank you, Chief. That means a lot. Don't thank me yet, O'Brien said with a slight smile. Thank me after we successfully test the fold drive and you're on your way home. Now come on, we've got 3 weeks of work to compress into 3 weeks of actual time, which means we're already behind schedule. Let's get started. As the two engineers dove back into technical specifications and fabrication schedules, neither noticed the small figure watching from the shadows of a maintenance corridor. The observer recorded everything, the engineering challenges, the timeline, the materials required, and then quietly withdrew to transmit the information to interested parties. The Obsidian Order had learned patience over centuries of intelligence operations. They didn't need to steal the fold technology directly. They just needed to understand it well enough to know when it became vulnerable. And a fold drive being repaired with inadequate materials by exhausted engineers on an impossible timeline? That was the very definition of vulnerable. 3 levels below engineering, in a secured intelligence workspace that officially didn't exist, Odo reviewed surveillance footage with growing concern. He had tracked the Cardassian operative, a merchant named Garrick who everyone knew was Obsidian Order but who maintained plausible deniability. Through 17 different locations over the past 3 days. Garrick was good. Very good. He never did anything overtly illegal, never accessed systems he shouldn't, never asked questions that couldn't be explained as innocent curiosity. But he was always nearby when sensitive information was discussed. Always listening. Always watching. Major, Odo transmitted to Kira's comm badge, we have a problem. Garrick is conducting surveillance on the SMS engineering team. I can't prove anything actionable yet, but he's definitely gathering intelligence for someone. Can you detain him? Kira asked. On what charges? Being in public spaces and listening to conversations. He's technically not breaking any laws, and if I arrest him without evidence, it'll create a diplomatic incident with Cardassia. But Major, he's going to learn enough about their fold drive to cause problems. I can feel it. Then we watch him watching them, Kira decided. And we warn Captain Wilder that not everyone on this station is friendly. If Garrick makes a move, we'll be ready. But as Odo continued his surveillance, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. Whatever the Obsidian Order was planning, it was already in motion. And by the time they figured out what it was, it might be too late to stop it. In the shadows of Deep Space Nine, intelligence games played out with stakes measured in lives, technology, and the stability of dimensional barriers that kept reality from unraveling. And in the center of it all, the Macross Quarter sat like a prize that everyone wanted and no one fully understood. The question wasn't whether someone would try to take it. The question was who would try first, and whether SMS would be ready when they did. The attack came at 0347 station time, during the shift change when security patrols were at their thinnest and crew fatigue was at its peak. It came not with warships or overt military action, but with subtlety and precision that spoke of weeks of planning by people who understood that the best way to steal something wasn't to take it by force. The first indication something was wrong came from the Macross Quarter's internal security systems. An alarm that should have triggered when someone accessed a restricted area didn't sound. A security checkpoint that should have logged an unauthorized entry showed no record of breach. And in engineering, Luca Angeloni jerked awake from where he'd fallen asleep at his console, instincts honed by years of SMS training screaming that something was wrong even before his conscious mind identified the threat. Security alert, he transmitted immediately over his comm badge. This is Lieutenant Angeloni in Quarter Engineering. I'm reading system anomalies consistent with infiltration protocols. Someone's bypassed our security systems. On the bridge of the Macross Quarter, the Night Watch officer responded instantly. Confirmed. Internal sensors show unauthorized personnel in sections 7 through 12. They're moving toward the full drive chamber. Security teams are responding. But the infiltrators were professionals. By the time SMS security teams arrived at the reported locations, the intruders had already moved, following routes that suggested intimate knowledge of the quarter's internal layout. They avoided security patrols with precision timing, disabled surveillance systems with equipment that shouldn't exist outside Cardassian military intelligence, and moved toward their objective with single-minded determination. Odo received the security alert in his office and was moving before the report finished. His shape-shifting abilities let him flow through ventilation systems and conduits far faster than any humanoid could run through corridors. He reached the Macross Quarter's main airlock in under 2 minutes, already reforming into his humanoid shape. Security Chief Odo to Captain Wilder, he transmitted. I'm detecting Cardassian biosigns aboard your vessel, at least 4 individuals, possibly more. They're using some kind of signal dampening technology that's interfering with our ability to track them precisely. Captain Wilder's voice came back immediately, alert and controlled. Understood. Commander Lee, get Skull Squadron to combat alert. If these infiltrators try to escape via fighter launch, I want them intercepted. Lieutenant Angeloni, secure the full drive chamber, don't let anyone access the core systems. Already on it, Captain, Luca responded, his fingers flying across security controls. I'm locking down engineering with emergency bulkheads and activating internal defense protocols. But sir, whoever these people are, they know our security systems. They're bypassing lockouts faster than I can implement them. In the full drive chamber, 4 figures worked with practiced efficiency. They wore dark adaptive camouflage that shifted to match their surroundings, carried equipment that scanned and recorded every detail of the damaged full drive, and moved with the coordinated precision of a special operations team that had trained together for years. The team leader, a Cardassian operative named Corbin in Tech who officially didn't exist and whose service record had been erased from all databases, studied the fold quartz matrix with professional appreciation. This was what the Obsidian Order had sent them to acquire, not the entire drive, which would be impossible to steal, but detailed scans and physical samples that could be analyzed and potentially replicated. Team 2, status, he transmitted on an encrypted channel. Scanning complete, came the response. We have full technical specifications on the dimensional stabilizers and fold carbon composites. But the fold quartz itself is beyond our scanning capability. The crystalline structure is too complex for passive sensors. We'll need physical samples. Negative, Intech replied immediately. Physical samples weren't authorized, too much risk of catastrophic failure if we damage the crystal matrix. We extract with scans only. Team 3, what's your status on security? Compromised, came the grim response. They know we're here and they're responding faster than projected. We have maybe 90 seconds before SMS security reaches our position, and that changeling security chief is somewhere in the ventilation system hunting for us. Recommend immediate extraction. Intech made a command decision in the span of a heartbeat. Acknowledged. All teams, withdraw to extraction point Delta. We leave nothing behind, no equipment, no evidence, no trace that we were here. But they had underestimated two critical factors. The first was Luca Angeloni's technical expertise. The young engineer had been analyzing the security breaches in real time, tracking patterns and predicting movements. Captain, they're heading for Cargo Bay 3. If they've got transport capability, that's the only location with enough space to beam out without interference from our fold drive's residual dimensional field. Block them, Wilder ordered. Already done. I've flooded Cargo Bay 3 with high-intensity sensor interference. They can't transport out without risking molecular dispersion. They'll need to find another extraction point, which gives us time to. The second factor they underestimated was Odo. The changeling security chief had been tracking the infiltrators through 3 dimensions, using his unique physiology to access spaces no humanoid could reach. He reformed directly in the corridor ahead of the Obsidian Order team, golden eyes fixed on Intech with absolute certainty. Gentlemen, Odo said with dangerous calm, you're under arrest for unlawful entry, espionage, and attempted theft of classified technology. Surrender now, or I'll be forced to use more aggressive methods of detention. Intech's hand moved toward a weapon, but froze as SMS security teams emerged from intersecting corridors, covering the Cardassians from 3 directions. Commander Ozma Lee stood at the center of the security formation, his service pistol aimed with the steady hand of someone who had shot people before and would do it again if necessary. I'd listen to him, Ozma said quietly. Because if Security Chief Odo doesn't get you, I will. And I'm a lot less concerned about your civil rights than he is. For a long moment, the corridor was frozen in potential violence. For Obsidian Order operatives against a changeling security chief and 15 SMS security personnel, with the knowledge that weapons fire in a confined space would likely kill people on both sides. Intech slowly raised his hands, calculating odds and finding them unacceptable. We surrender. But I should inform you that we are protected under Cardassian diplomatic protocols as intelligence operatives conducting legitimate surveillance of potential security threats. Save it for the tribunal, Odo interrupted, already moving to secure the prisoners. You broke into a vessel under Federation protection, accessed classified systems, and attempted to steal technology. That's espionage, regardless of how you try to justify it. Take them to the security office. And scan them thoroughly. Obsidian Order operatives are known for carrying suicide implants and hidden transmitters. As SMS security teams moved to comply, Major Kira's voice came through the comm system with urgent intensity. All stations, we have incoming vessels. 3 Cardassian warships just dropped out of warp, heading directly for DS9. They're hailing and demanding the immediate release of Cardassian citizens who were unlawfully detained. Captain Sisko's response was immediate. Red alert. All defensive systems online. Hail the lead Cardassian vessel. On DS9's viewscreen, Gul Evek appeared again, but this time his diplomatic veneer was gone, replaced with barely restrained aggression. Captain Sisko, you are holding Cardassian citizens without cause. Release them immediately, or we will consider this an act of war against the Cardassian Union. Gul Evek, Sisko replied with steel in his voice, the individuals were holding broke into a vessel under Federation protection and attempted to steal classified technology. They were caught in the act by multiple witnesses. That's not unlawful detention, that's arresting criminals. They were conducting legitimate intelligence-gathering operations. They were committing espionage, Captain Wilder interrupted, his image appearing alongside Cisco's. And Ghoul Evek, let's be completely clear about something. Those operatives tried to steal SMS proprietary technology that belongs to a private corporation, not a government. Even in your universe, corporate espionage is illegal. Or does the Cardassian Union officially endorse theft from private entities? Evek's expression showed frustration. He had clearly expected a simple extraction operation, threaten enough military force, the Federation would fold and release the prisoners to avoid escalation. But Wilder's involvement complicated things, because SMS wasn't bound by Federation diplomatic protocols or regulations about use of force. Captain Wilder, I understand you're upset. But you must understand that the Cardassian Union cannot allow its operatives to be held and interrogated by hostile powers. The intelligence they possess is sensitive. Then you shouldn't have sent them to steal our technology, Ozma interjected flatly. Ghoul Evek, here's what's going to happen. Those operatives are going to be held and questioned. If they cooperated willingly with your intelligence services, they're spies and will be treated as such. If they were coerced or acting under duress, we'll take that into consideration. But they don't get to commit crimes and then hide behind diplomatic immunity. A fourth voice joined the conversation, carrying the distinctive accent and authority of a Klingon warrior. General Martok's image appeared on the viewscreen as the IKS-CH Tang maneuvered into position alongside DS-9, weapons charged and targeting solutions locked on the Cardassian vessels. Ghoul Evek, Martok rumbled with barely concealed satisfaction, perhaps you didn't hear clearly. The SMS warriors have declared these Cardassians to be criminals caught in the act of dishonorable theft. As allies of SMS, the Klingon Empire supports their right to justice. If you attempt to extract these prisoners by force, you will fight not just the Federation, but also the Klingon Defense Force. I suggest you reconsider your position. The tactical situation had shifted dramatically. 3 Cardassian warships against Deep Space Nine's defenses alone might have been manageable. But DS-9, plus the Macross Quarter's firepower, plus a Klingon bird of prey commanded by a general who clearly wanted an excuse to fight Cardassians. That was a battle Evek couldn't win. This isn't over, Evek said coldly. The Cardassian Union will file formal protests with the Federation Council. And Captain Wilder, you've made powerful enemies today. The Obsidian Order does not forget insults. Good, Wilder replied without hesitation. Because I want them to remember that SMS doesn't tolerate theft, espionage, or any attempt to compromise our operations. Tell your superiors that if they want our technology, they can try to develop it themselves. But if they try to steal it again, the consequences will be significantly more severe than a few operatives spending time in a holding cell. The transmission ended, leaving the Cardassian warships holding position but not withdrawing. A standoff, frozen in potential violence but not quite tipping over into actual combat. In Deep Space Nine's security office, Odo personally conducted the interrogation of Corbin in tech. The Obsidian Order operative sat calmly despite his restraints, his expression showing no fear or concern. You won't get anything from me, Changeling, Intech said confidently. I'm trained to resist interrogation, and Cardassian law protects intelligence operatives from forced testimony. I don't need to interrogate you, Odo replied, placing a data isolinear chip on the table between them. This contains every second of surveillance footage from your infiltration. Your routes, your methods, your equipment. I know exactly how you bypassed SMS security systems because I watched you do it. What I want to know is who gave you the technical specifications necessary to understand those systems in the first place. For the first time, Intech's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're. You knew the quarter's internal layout down to the meter, Odo interrupted. You knew which security protocols to bypass and in what order. You had equipment specifically designed to interface with SMS technology. That level of intelligence doesn't come from observation, it comes from someone with inside access. So I'll ask again, who is your source? In tech, silence was answer enough. Somewhere on Deep Space Nine or aboard the Macross Quarter, there was someone feeding intelligence to the Obsidian Order. Someone with access to technical specifications and security protocols. Someone who had betrayed SMS trust for Cardassian money or ideology. Constable Odo, came Captain Wilder's voice through the comm, I need you in the conference room immediately. We have a situation. The conference room was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was different. Sharper, more dangerous. Captain Sisko stood at the head of the table with an expression that promised consequences. Captain Wilder looked like he hadn't slept in days. Ozma leaned against the wall with crossed arms and barely restrained fury. And in the center of attention sat a civilian contractor, a human engineer named Marcus Chen who had been hired by SMS 6 months ago to work on communication systems integration. Tell them, Wilder said quietly, his voice carrying more threat than any shout could convey. Chen's face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. I didn't know they were going to try to steal anything. I swear. They approached me 3 weeks ago, said they just wanted basic information about your systems. They paid well, and I thought it was just corporate intelligence gathering, not actual espionage. You gave classified technical specifications to foreign intelligence operatives, Ozma interrupted, his voice absolutely cold. You compromised our security systems. You endangered every person aboard this ship. And you did it for money. I needed the money. Chen burst out. Do you have any idea what it's like working for SMS? The pay is barely competitive, the contracts are dangerous, and there's no job security. I have family who depend on me, debts I can't pay. We all have problems, Wilder said quietly. Every person on this crew has obligations, families, debts. But they don't betray their shipmates for profit. You do realize what you've done, don't you? Those Obsidian Order operatives could have sabotaged the fold drive. They could have planted explosives. They could have done anything, and we wouldn't have known because you gave them the keys to every lock on this ship. Chen's composure broke completely. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did, Sisko said firmly. Mr. Chen, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and violation of Federation security protocols. You'll be held pending formal charges and trial. And Mr. Chen, given that you endangered a vessel with classified technology during wartime, I expect the prosecution will be pushing for maximum sentences. As security officers led Chen away, still protesting his innocence and begging for understanding, the remaining officers sat in heavy silence. We need to do a complete security audit, Ozma said finally. Every system, every crew member, every contractor. If Chen compromised us, there might be others. Agreed, Wilder confirmed. And we need to accelerate our repair timeline. The longer we stay here, the more opportunities people have to infiltrate, compromise, or steal our technology. Chief O'Brien, Lieutenant Angeloni, I need you to push harder on the fold drive repairs. I don't care if the components aren't perfect. I need this ship ready to jump in 2 weeks maximum. Captain, Luca protested, 2 weeks isn't enough time to properly test the dimensional stabilizers. If they fail during fold transition. I know the risks, Lieutenant. But right now, staying here is becoming more dangerous than risking an unstable fold jump. We've made too many enemies, acquired too much attention, and apparently can't trust our own crew not to sell us out. We're leaving as soon as physically possible, even if the odds aren't ideal. Sisko nodded slowly, understanding the calculation. Captain, Starfleet will provide any resources you need to accelerate repairs. And I'll speak with Admiral Ross about assigning additional security to your vessel, people I personally trust, who won't be compromised by outside influences. I appreciate that, Captain. But ultimately, this is SMS's responsibility. We trusted the wrong person, and we paid the price. Now we fix the problem and move on. Wilder stood, signaling the meeting was over. Commander Lee, I want a full security briefing in 2 hours. Everyone gets revetted, everyone gets new security protocols, and if anyone so much as looks like they're keeping secrets, I want to know about it. Aye, Captain. Consider it done. As the officers dispersed, Odo remained behind with Sisko. Benjamin, I've been tracking intelligence activities on this station for years. The Obsidian Order is persistent, well-funded, and extremely patient. Even with Chin arrested and in Tech's team in custody, they won't stop. They'll just try different methods. I know, Sisko replied quietly. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Right now, I'm more concerned about what happens when the Dominion learns that Cardassian intelligence tried to steal SMS technology and failed. The Founders are going to interpret that as proof that the technology is valuable, which means they'll want it even more. And they'll send the Jem'Hadar next time, Odo finished. Which will be significantly less subtle than the Obsidian Order. Exactly. Odo, I want security doubled around the Macross Quarter. No one gets within 100 meters of that ship without explicit authorization. And I want to know immediately if any Dominion ships enter this sector. Understood. But Benjamin, we both know that when the Dominion decides to act, doubled security won't be enough. They'll send everything they have, and we'll have to decide whether defending SMS is worth starting a battle that could cost thousands of lives. Sisko looked out the viewport at the Macross Quarter, sitting peacefully at its docking berth despite everything that had happened. I've already made that decision, old man. Captain Wilder and his people fought beside us, saved this station from a Dimension Eater, and have been nothing but honorable despite being thrown into impossible circumstances. When the Dominion comes, and they will come, Deep Space Nine stands with SMS. No matter what it costs. Odo nodded slowly, recognizing the moral certainty in Sisko's voice. This wasn't political calculation or strategic necessity. This was Benjamin Sisko making a command decision based on principles, regardless of consequences. Which meant when the Jem'Hadar came, the battle would be absolutely brutal. And somewhere in the Gamma Quadrant, aboard a Dominion command ship, a Founder received intelligence reports about Cardassian infiltration failures and SMS defensive capabilities. The shapeshifter processed the information with the cold logic of a being that had spent millennia imposing order on chaos. The conclusion was obvious: the Macross Quarter represented both a threat and an opportunity. A threat because its technology could shift the balance of power. An opportunity because capturing it would provide the Dominion with capabilities no other power possessed. The Founder issued orders to assemble a strike force. Not 3 ships. Not 10. 50 vessels minimum, with Jem'Hadar shock troops prepared for boarding operations, Vorta administrators ready to negotiate if force failed, and explicit orders to capture the Macross Quarter intact if possible, destroy it if necessary. The Dominion had learned patience over centuries of conquest. But patience had limits. And those limits had just been reached. The attack would come within days. And when it did, everyone involved, Starfleet, SMS, Klingon, and Cardassians, would face a battle that would determine whether the Macross Quarter survived to see home, or became another prize in the Dominion's endless campaign of imposed order. The warning came at dawn station time, when the skeleton crew on DS9's night shift detected the spatial distortions that preceded Dominion fleet movements. Lieutenant Nog was the first to see it, his Ferengi ears flattening instinctively as his console lit up with contact markers that just kept multiplying. Captain Sisko to Ops immediately. Nog transmitted, his voice cracking despite his best efforts at professional calm. We have massive Dominion fleet movement heading toward our position. Sensors read 47, no, 53. Captain, they're still coming through. 60+ Dominion warships on intercept course, ETA 45 minutes. Captain Benjamin Sisko ran into Ops still fastening his uniform, with Major Kira and Dax right behind him. The main view screen showed what every tactical officer dreaded, a Dominion armada so large it would overwhelm any conventional defense. Jem'Hadar battlecruisers, attack ships, and even several of the massive Dominion dreadnoughts that had turned entire battles during the war. "Battle stations," Sisko ordered, his voice carrying absolute calm despite the odds. "Get me Starfleet Command, the Klingon Defense Force, and Captain Wilder. And somebody wake up every off-duty officer on this station, we're going to need everyone." On the Macross Quarter, the alert klaxons had already brought the entire crew to combat readiness. Captain Wilder stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with the grim recognition of someone who had seen this kind of overwhelming force before. During the Zentradi Wars, humanity had faced extinction from fleets that outnumbered them thousands to one. This was smaller in scale, but no less deadly in intent. "Captain Sisko is hailing," the communications officer reported. Sisko's face appeared on the view screen, and Wilder could see the calculation behind his eyes, the terrible mathematics of military command that weighed lives against strategic necessity. "Captain Wilder, you see what's coming. That's not a raid or a probing attack. That's an invasion force designed to capture or destroy your vessel regardless of casualties or collateral damage." "I see it," Wilder confirmed. "Captain, I appreciate everything you've done for us. But this is my fight, not yours. The Quarter can undock and attempt to run, maybe we can draw the Dominion fleet away from DS9 before they engage. With a damaged full drive and conventional impulse engines against 60+ warships." Sisko's tone made clear what he thought of that plan. "Captain, you'd be caught and destroyed within minutes. No, if we're fighting this, we fight it together. Deep Space Nine has the firepower to hold against a Dominion assault, and your variable fighters can provide mobile support that we desperately need." "Benjamin," Dax interrupted from her station, "Starfleet Command is responding. They're dispatching the Third Fleet to our position, but they're 12 hours away minimum. And the Klingon are sending General Martok with 2 additional birds of prey, but they won't arrive for at least 6 hours. We're on our own until then." "Then we hold for 6 hours, Sisko said simply. "Captain Wilder, I need Skull Squadron in space providing fighter cover. Your main vessel should maintain position near the station. If they try to board, we'll need your combat capabilities at close range." Before Wilder could respond, Ozma Lee's voice cut in over the comm. "Captain, Skull Squadron is already prepping for launch. We saw the tactical display. Permission to coordinate with the Defiant for maximum effect?" "Granted," Wilder confirmed. "But Commander, this isn't like fighting the Vajra or sparring with Klingon. The Jem'Hadar are suicide troops who view death as an honor. They won't break, won't retreat, and won't hesitate to ram you if they think it'll complete their mission." "Understood, sir. We'll adapt." Ozma's tone carried absolute confidence. "Skull Squadron, this is lead. Launch in 2 minutes. Standard combat load plus every missile we can carry. This is going to be ugly." In the Macross Quarter's hangar bay, 5 variable fighters sat ready for launch. Alto Sautom ran through pre-flight checks with focused intensity, his mind already analyzing the tactical situation. 60 Dominion warships meant hundreds of Jem'Hadar fighters, all piloted by warriors bred for combat who had been fighting since birth. "Alto," came Luca's voice through the squadron channel, "I've uploaded every tactical analysis I could pull from Federation databases. Jem'Hadar attack patterns, weapons ranges, known vulnerabilities. It's not much, but it might help." "Every little bit matters," Alto confirmed. "Thanks, Luca. Now get yourself to a secure location. If they try boarding, the engineering sections will be primary targets." "Already on it. Good hunting, Skull Squadron." The fighters launched in perfect formation, transforming to fighter mode as they cleared the hangar bay and accelerated into defensive positions around Deep Space Nine. The station itself was a fortress of firepower, with phaser arrays, quantum torpedoes, and defensive shields that could absorb tremendous punishment. But against 60 warships, even a fortress had limits. All stations, this is Captain Sisko, came the broadcast across all channels. In 5 minutes, we're going to face the largest Dominion assault this station has ever seen. I won't lie to you, the odds aren't good. But we've faced impossible odds before and survived. We're not just defending a space station today. We're defending the principle that people have the right to exist without being conquered, assimilated, or destroyed by forces that believe in imposed order. Deep Space Nine holds. DS9 always holds. Battle stations. The Dominion fleet dropped out of warp in perfect formation, their vessels arranged in the methodical patterns that spoke of genetic engineering and absolute discipline. At the center of the formation, a massive Dominion dreadnought carried the Vorta administrator Weyoun and a founder who would observe the battle personally. Weyoun's image appeared on DS9's viewscreen, his characteristic smile firmly in place despite the circumstances. Captain Sisko, the founders wished to make their intentions clear. We have no quarrel with the Federation today. Surrender the dimensional anomaly vessel and its crew to Dominion custody, and we will withdraw peacefully. Refuse, and we will take what we require by force. The choice is yours. Weyoun, Sisko replied with steel in his voice, the Macross Quarter and its crew are under Federation protection. They've committed no crimes, threatened no one who didn't attack them first, and have been nothing but honorable guests. I'm not handing innocent people over to be imprisoned or dissected by the Dominion. So here's my counteroffer. Withdraw your forces immediately, or Deep Space Nine will demonstrate exactly why the Federation hasn't lost this war yet. So be it, Weyoun said, and his smile never wavered even as he gave the order. All forces, engage. Capture the dimensional vessel intact if possible. Destroy it if necessary. And Captain Sisko, I am sorry it had to end this way. The founders genuinely respected your tactical skill. The transmission ended, and the Dominion fleet opened fire. Polaron beams and plasma torpedoes cascaded across space in a devastating barrage. Deep Space Nine's shields flared brilliant blue as they absorbed impacts that would have destroyed lesser installations. The station's phaser arrays returned fire with precise counter-battery strikes, and quantum torpedoes streaked out to intercept the leading Dominion vessels. The first Jem'Hadar attack ship to reach engagement range exploded as it took concentrated fire from 3 of DS9's weapon platforms simultaneously. But there were dozens more behind it, and they kept coming with the relentless advance of soldiers who didn't fear death. Skull Squadron hit them from an unexpected angle. Alto transformed to Gerwalk mode and came in low relative to the Dominion formation, his gun pod chewing through the shields of a Jem'Hadar fighter before the pilot could react. Michael Blanc provided covering fire, his beam weapon scoring hits on 2 more fighters while his electronic warfare systems disrupted their targeting solutions. Clan Klang's sniper configuration VF-25G stayed at maximum range, her beam rifle precision striking the weapons arrays of Dominion battlecruisers. Each shot disabled weapons systems without destroying the vessels, a calculated strategy to reduce enemy firepower while conserving their limited ammunition. They're not breaking formation, Ozma observed, his fighter weaving through incoming fire with maneuvers that would have torn apart anyone without SMS pilot augmentation. They're accepting casualties and maintaining advance. Skull Squadron, focus on the attack ships, keep them off the station's shields. The Defiant had undocked and was tearing through the Dominion formation like a predator among prey. Small, fast, and equipped with ablative armor that shrugged off hits that would cripple larger vessels, the Defiant was Captain Sisko's personal answer to the Dominion threat. Quantum torpedoes fired in rapid succession, each one destroying or crippling a Jem'Hadar attack ship. But the Dominion had numbers, discipline, and absolute certainty in their mission. For every ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The battle evolved into a brutal war of attrition, with DS9 and its defenders slowly being overwhelmed by sheer weight of firepower. Shields at 60%, Major Kira reported from Ops. They're concentrating fire on our lower docking pylons. If they breach there, reroute emergency power to those sections, Cisco ordered. And target the Dominion battlecruisers providing fire support. If we can destroy their heavy ships, the attack ships become manageable. On the Macross Quarter's bridge, Captain Wilder made a decision he had been avoiding. Tactical, prepare the Macross cannon. Single shot, maximum power. Target the Dominion dreadnought at the center of their formation. His tactical officer turned, surprise evident. Sir, that'll drain our reactor significantly. We'll be vulnerable during the recharge cycle. I know. But that dreadnought is coordinating their entire fleet. Take it out, and their formation will have to reorganize, which gives DS9 time to recover shields and reposition. Do it. The Macross Quarter began its transformation sequence. Hull sections shifted, engines reconfigured, and the entire vessel unfolded into its battle mode, a 400-meter humanoid battle mech bristling with weapons. The transformation drew immediate attention from every Dominion vessel in range, their tactical programming recognizing a high-value target. 20 Jem'Hadar attack ships broke formation and accelerated toward the quarter with suicide attack vectors. They intended to ram the vessel before it could complete transformation and fire its main weapon. Skull Squadron, this is Quarter Actual, Wilder transmitted. We've got company coming in hot. I need those attack ships off us for 90 seconds. Copy that, Quarter, Ozma responded immediately. Skull Squadron, defensive formation around the quarter. Everything gets through us before it touches our ship. Move. 5 variable fighters positioned themselves between the transforming Macross Quarter and 20 incoming attack ships. It was suicide tactics meeting desperation, and what followed would be remembered as the most intense 90 seconds of combat anyone present had ever witnessed. Alto transformed to Batroid mode and literally grabbed onto a Jem'Hadar attack ship, using his mech's manipulators to redirect its ramming vector into another attacking vessel. Both ships exploded in a fireball that would have consumed Alto if his shields hadn't been at maximum strength. Michael emptied his entire missile payload into the densest concentration of attack ships, saturating their point defense systems and destroying 5 vessels in rapid succession. But it left him without long-range weapons, forcing him to close to gunpod range where Jem'Hadar disruptors could tear through his shields. Clan scored 3 precision kills, her beam rifle taking out bridge sections and leaving the attack ships tumbling without guidance. But precision took time, and time was something they didn't have. Luca deployed every electronic warfare countermeasure in his arsenal, creating false targeting data and sensor ghosts that confused Dominion fire control systems. But 3 attack ships broke through the interference and continued their suicide run directly at the quarter. Ozma intercepted them personally. His VF-25S Messiah transformed to Jerwalk mode and executed a maneuver that violated every safety protocol SMS had ever written. He matched velocity with the lead attack ship, transformed to Batroid, and physically grabbed onto its hull. Then he emptied his gunpod directly into the vessel's impulse drive at point-blank range. The resulting explosion consumed the attack ship and threw Ozma's fighter tumbling through space, shields down to critical levels and multiple systems showing red on his damage displays. But he had stopped the suicide run, and the Macross Quarter had the time it needed. Macross cannon charged, the quarter's tactical officer reported. Target locked on Dominion dreadnought. Firing. The heavy quantum beam cannon discharged with a roar of dimensional energy that lit up every sensor in the battle. The coherent beam of destruction crossed the distance between the quarter and the dreadnought in microseconds, striking the massive vessel's shields with enough force to overload them instantly. The dreadnought's shields collapsed. The beam continued through armor, through structural supports, through the command sections where Weyoun and a founder observed the battle. In 3 seconds, the most powerful vessel in the Dominion fleet simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that debris was measured in molecular fragments. The Dominion formation faltered. For the first time since the battle began, the relentless advance paused as Jem'Hadar commanders processed the loss of their central command vessel. It was only a moment, perhaps 5 seconds of hesitation, but in space combat, 5 seconds was eternity. All stations, concentrate fire on the nearest battlecruisers. Sisko ordered, recognizing the opportunity. Take them down while they're disorganized. DS-9's weapons platforms targeted 3 battlecruisers simultaneously and poured fire into them with focused intensity. The Defiant added quantum torpedoes to the barrage. And Skull Squadron, regrouping despite heavy damage, struck at the Dominion's weakened flank. 7 more Dominion vessels were destroyed in the following minute, and the formation began to crack. The genetically engineered discipline that made the Jem'Hadar such effective soldiers also made them inflexible when command structures broke down. Without central coordination, individual ships reverted to aggressive but uncoordinated attacks. "They're breaking," Kira reported with fierce satisfaction. "Dominion forces are withdrawing to regroup." But the reprieve was temporary, and everyone knew it. The Dominion had lost perhaps 15 ships out of 60. They still had overwhelming numerical superiority, and they would reorganize and attack again within minutes. "Captain," Dax said quietly from her science station, "I'm detecting a wormhole opening. Multiple ships emerging." Every person in Ops tensed, expecting Dominion reinforcements that would end the battle immediately. But the vessels that emerged from the Bajoran wormhole weren't Dominion. They were Starfleet. The USS Galaxy, USS Yorktown, and 8 more Federation starships dropped out of warp in perfect formation, their arrival timed with the precision that spoke of command officers who understood tactical necessity. And leading them was the USS Enterprise E, its distinctive saucer section and dual nacelles immediately recognizable. "This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise," came a transmission across all frequencies. "Captain Sisko, Starfleet received your distress call. We came as fast as we could. What's your status?" Sisko felt relief wash over him so intensely it was almost physical. "Captain Picard, you have excellent timing. We're facing 60 Dominion warships attempting to capture or destroy the Macross Quarter. We've held them so far, but they'll regroup and attack again within minutes. Then we'll ensure they don't get that chance," Picard replied with absolute certainty. "All Federation vessels, engage Dominion forces. And Captain Sisko, I believe you owe me dinner after this. I had to cancel a very important archaeological symposium to come save your station." "I'll make it worth your while, Captain," Sisko promised. "All stations, coordinate with the Enterprise. Let's show the Dominion what happens when they threaten Federation allies." The battle resumed, but the tactical situation had transformed completely. 12 fresh Federation starships with full shields and weapons against 45 damaged Dominion vessels still trying to regroup from their command loss. The Enterprise's weapons tore through Jem'Hadar attack ships with devastating efficiency, while the Galaxy-class starships engaged the remaining battlecruisers in direct combat. On the Macross Quarter's bridge, Captain Wilder watched the Federation reinforcements arrive and felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this universe, genuine hope that they might actually survive this. "Captain Sisko," he transmitted, "the Quarter's reactor is recharging, but we're still vulnerable. Can your Federation ships hold them long enough for us to recover?" "Captain Wilder, watch and learn," Sisko replied. "This is what the Federation does when you threaten our friends. We come in force, and we don't back down." The combined Federation SMS force pressed their advantage ruthlessly. The Dominion formation, already disrupted by the loss of their command vessel, couldn't withstand the coordinated assault. Within 20 minutes, half the remaining Dominion ships were destroyed or crippled, and the survivors finally did what Jem'Hadar soldiers almost never did. They retreated. The surviving Dominion vessels broke off engagement and accelerated toward the wormhole, their tactical programming finally overriding suicidal aggression with strategic necessity. They had failed their mission, taken catastrophic casualties, and lost their command structure. Continuing the battle would achieve nothing except total annihilation. "Cease fire," Cisco ordered as the last Dominion vessels disappeared through the wormhole. "All stations, damage report. Medical teams to any sections that took casualties. And someone get me a casualty count, I need to know what this cost us." The reports came in gradually, painting a picture of desperate victory. Deep Space Nine had taken significant damage to its lower docking ring and 3 habitat sections, but the station's core systems remained intact. The Defiant had survived with moderate damage. Skull Squadron had all returned alive, though Michael's fighter would need extensive repairs and Ozma's was barely flight capable. And the Macross Quarter, despite being the primary target, had suffered only minor damage. A testament to SMS defensive systems and the variable fighters that had sacrificed themselves to protect it. Captain Picard's image appeared on the main view screen, his expression carrying the satisfaction of someone who had achieved his objective. "Captain Cisco, it appears Deep Space Nine lives up to its reputation for surviving impossible situations. I trust your unusual guests are worth all this trouble." "More than worth it, Captain," Cisco confirmed. "Captain Wilder and Skull Squadron fought alongside us from the beginning. They saved this station from a dimensional anomaly, earned Klingon respect through combat skill, and just proved they're willing to stand against overwhelming odds to defend their allies. In my book, that makes them Federation allies regardless of what universe they're from." Picard nodded slowly. "Then Starfleet Command will be very interested in meeting them." "But Captain, that weapon the Macross Quarter deployed. The beam that destroyed a Dominion dreadnought in seconds. I trust you understand the implications of that level of firepower in the wrong hands." "I do," Cisco confirmed. "Which is why I'm trusting it in the right hands, the hands of people who use it to defend, not conquer." "Captain Picard, meet Captain Jeffrey Wilder of the Strategic Military Services Macross Quarter." Wilder's image appeared alongside Cisco's, and 2 of Starfleet's most distinguished captains studied each other across light years and dimensional barriers. Picard saw a military officer who carried the weight of command with practiced ease, someone who understood both the necessity and the cost of violence. Wilder saw a diplomat warrior who believed in principles but wasn't naive about reality. "Captain Wilder," Picard began, "I've read the preliminary reports about your arrival here. Dimensional displacement, technology from another universe, combat capabilities that concern every power in this quadrant. Under normal circumstances, Starfleet would have significant reservations about allowing such a vessel to operate freely in Federation space. But these aren't normal circumstances," Wilder replied, understanding where this was going. "No, they aren't. You've proven your character through actions, and you've earned allies who speak highly of your honor. So while Starfleet will want to understand your technology and your intentions, I'm personally satisfied that you represent no threat to the Federation. In fact, I believe you're exactly the kind of allies we need in these troubled times." "Captain Picard, I appreciate that," Wilder said sincerely. "But I should be clear about something, our goal remains getting home. We have our own war to fight, our own people who depend on us. This isn't our conflict, and while we'll defend ourselves and our allies, we're not looking to become permanent fixtures in your universe's politics." "Understood, Captain. Then perhaps we can help expedite your departure. The Enterprise has engineering specialists who might be able to assist with your fold drive repairs. And I believe I know someone at Starfleet R&D who would be fascinated by the challenge of adapting your dimensional technology to our universe's physics." Before Wilder could respond, an urgent transmission came through from the Macross Quarter's engineering section. Luca's voice carried a mixture of excitement and concern that made everyone immediately pay attention. "Captain Wilder, Chief O'Brien, I've been analyzing the fold drive's performance during the battle, and I think I found something." When the Macross cannon fired, the energy discharge created a localized dimensional resonance that's very similar to superdimension space characteristics. It was only there for a few seconds, but it was there. Captain, I think we can use the Macross cannon's energy signature to prime the fold drive for a jump home. O'Brien's voice joined in. He's right, Captain. We'd need to carefully calibrate the energy discharge and route it through the fold quartz matrix instead of the main weapon, but theoretically it could create the superdimension space pocket we need to initiate a fold. It's risky, but it might work. Wilder looked at the assembled images on his view screen, Sisko, Picard, and the faces of people who had become allies in impossible circumstances. How long to prepare? 72 hours minimum, Luca estimated. We need to reconfigure the reactor output, install new routing systems, and test everything at least twice because if this fails during actual fold initiation, everyone dies horribly across multiple dimensions, Wilder finished. Yeah, I remember. Alright. 72 hours. Let's make it happen. As the transmission ended and repair crews began the frantic work of preparing for one final, desperate attempt to go home, Captain Sisko stood in ops and watched the Macross Quarter through the viewports. In 72 hours, these warriors from another universe would attempt to leave, returning to their own conflicts and their own challenges. And Deep Space Nine would be a little bit emptier for their absence. But they had fought together, bled together, and survived together. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not politics, not technology, not strategic advantage, just the simple fact that when people needed help, others stood with them regardless of the cost. That, Sisko reflected, was what the Federation was supposed to be about. And today, they had lived up to that ideal. 72 hours could pass like an eternity or a heartbeat, depending on whether you were racing against time or dreading an inevitable goodbye. For the crew of Deep Space Nine and the Macross Quarter, it was both simultaneously. Chief O'Brien hadn't slept in nearly 60 hours, surviving on coffee, stimulants, and the stubborn determination that had carried him through 2 decades of impossible engineering challenges. His hands worked with practiced precision despite exhaustion, routing power conduits through pathways that had never been designed to carry Macross cannon energy signatures directly to a fold drive matrix. This is insane, he muttered for perhaps the 100th time, though his tone carried professional satisfaction rather than genuine complaint. We're channeling weapon discharge energy designed to vaporize capital ships, through crystalline matrices that are already fractured and using that to bootstrap a dimensional transition that shouldn't be possible in our universe's physics. If this works, I'm writing a paper that'll make every engineer in Starfleet question their career choices. Luca Angeloni worked beside him, fingers flying across control interfaces as he calibrated fold quartz resonance frequencies with microscopic precision. If this works, Chief, you're getting co-author credit on the SMS Technical Journal publication. Novel applications of directed energy discharge for superdimension space field generation in non-native dimensional frameworks. It'll be legendary. If this works, I'm taking a month-long vacation somewhere with absolutely no dimensional anomalies, no spatial distortions, and no fold drives, O'Brien countered. Maybe visit my wife's family on Earth and fix nothing more complicated than a replicator. That sounds nice, Luca admitted wistfully. I haven't seen home in 8 months now. Though I suppose technically I've never been this far from home. Dimensionally speaking, I'm infinitely distant from the human colonies I'm supposed to be protecting. O'Brien caught the tone in the young engineer's voice, the exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness into emotional territory. Lieutenant, you okay? Honestly? I'm terrified. Luca didn't stop working, but his voice carried the weight of someone who needed to speak a truth out loud. We're about to attempt a fold jump with a damaged drive, using improvised components, through dimensional barriers that shouldn't allow fold technology to function. The margin for error is effectively zero. If any single variable is off by more than 0.03%, the fold bubble collapses and everyone aboard the quarter experiences dimensional dissolution. What does that mean, exactly? Dimensional dissolution. It means you exist in every possible quantum state simultaneously without any mechanism to collapse back into a single coherent existence. You're alive and dead, here and not here, experiencing every possible timeline at once. Your consciousness persists, but your body is scattered across infinite dimensional variants. It's considered the worst possible way to die in SMS's understanding of full technology failures. O'Brien was quiet for a moment, processing that information. Then he smiled grimly. Well then, Lieutenant, I suggest we make damn sure our calculations are accurate to more than 0.03%. Because I'm not explaining to Captain Wilder that I let his crew dissolve across multiple dimensions because I rounded off a decimal place. Despite everything, Luca laughed, a genuine sound that cut through the tension. Deal, Chief. No rounding errors, no decimal place mistakes, no close enough engineering. We do this perfectly or not at all. They worked in companionable silence for several more minutes before Dax's voice came through the calm. Engineering, this is Ops. How's our timeline looking? We're on schedule, O'Brien reported. Final system checks will be complete in approximately 6 hours. Then we'll need another 2 hours to bring the full drive online safely and let the dimensional stabilizers warm up. Captain Wilder's looking at a launch window starting in 8 hours and extending for approximately 47 minutes. 47 minutes. Dax's voice carried scientific curiosity. That's oddly specific. That's how long the dimensional resonance from the Macross cannon discharge will remain stable enough to bootstrap the fold field, Luca explained. After that, the energy signature degrades below minimum threshold and we'd need to fire the cannon again, which would drain the reactor and delay everything by another 12 hours minimum. So they get one shot, Dax said quietly. 8 hours from now, the Macross Quarter either successfully folds home or doesn't. Pretty much, O'Brien confirmed. Dax, I'll need you in engineering for the final calibrations. Your Trill symbiont has experience with dimensional physics from Dax's fourth host, right? I could use that expertise for the stability calculations. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Miles, good work. All of you. This is the kind of engineering that changes how we understand reality itself. Let's just hope it changes reality in the direction of SMS successfully returns home, rather than catastrophic dimensional collapse, O'Brien muttered, but he was smiling slightly as he returned to his work. On Deep Space Nine's promenade, an impromptu gathering had formed at Quark's bar. It wasn't an official farewell party, those would come later, if time permitted, but rather an organic collection of people who had fought together, bled together, and wanted to share one more drink before dimensional barriers separated them permanently. Ozma Lee sat at the bar with General Martok, both warriors working their way through Klingon blood wine with the dedicated focus of people who understood that some conversations required alcohol to facilitate proper honesty. You fight well, Commander, Martok said, raising his mug in salute. In another life, you would have made a fine Klingon. You understand that victory sometimes requires sacrifice, and you're willing to pay that price personally rather than asking others to die in your place. In my universe, we learned that lesson the hard way, Ozma replied, his own mug raised in response. When the Zentradi nearly destroyed Earth, the pilots who survived did so because they were willing to put themselves between civilians and overwhelming force. That's not bravery, General, that's just the job. Someone has to stand on the wall. Might as well be people who are trained for it. Philosophy of a warrior, Martok agreed. Not seeking glory, but accepting duty. This is wisdom many Klingon forget in their pursuit of honor. They chase reputation rather than simply doing what must be done. You're not like that, Ozma observed. You command from the front, you respect your enemies, and you don't waste lives for political advantage. That's why your people follow you, General. Not because you're the strongest or the loudest, but because you're worth following. Martok studied Ozma with his remaining eye, seeing something that resonated with his own experiences. You lost people, didn't you? Not just comrades in battle, but people you were responsible for. People whose deaths you carry. Everyone who commands loses people, Ozma said quietly. But yeah. I've lost pilots I trained, friends who trusted me to bring them home. The Vajra don't care about skill or bravery, sometimes you just get unlucky, and someone who deserved to live doesn't make it back. That's the part they don't tell you in officer training. The nightmares aren't about the combat. They're about the faces of people you couldn't save. This is why we drink, Martok said simply. To honor the dead, to remember those who fell, and to steel ourselves for the battles yet to come. Commander Lee, when you return to your universe, remember that you have allies here. If you ever find a way back, through dimensional anomaly, technological breakthrough, or sheer stubborn determination, the Klingon Empire will welcome you as battle brothers. You have earned that through blood and honor. I'll remember, General. And if you ever find your way to my universe, look up SMS. We'll have blood wine ready and stories to trade. They drank in silence after that, two warriors from different realities sharing the camaraderie that only comes from facing death together and surviving to tell about it. Across the bar, Alto Satom sat with Lieutenant Nog, both younger officers watching their commanders with a mixture of respect and understanding. Alto nursed a synthahol drink while Nog worked on a root beer. The Ferengi's drink of choice despite his uncle's protests that it was undignified. Your Commander Lee reminds me of Captain Sisko, Nog said thoughtfully. He doesn't talk about his accomplishments, but everyone knows he's done things that should be impossible. And people follow him because they trust that he'll get them through whatever comes. Ozma's, Alto paused, searching for words. He's like the older brother I never had. He's loud, he's crude, he makes terrible jokes, and he drinks too much. But when things go wrong, when everything's falling apart and you're not sure you'll survive the next 5 minutes, Ozma's the one who stays calm and figures out a way through. I've seen him save entire squadrons through sheer refusal to accept that a situation is hopeless. That's command presence, Nog said. My Uncle Ram always said that the best leaders aren't the ones who never face impossible situations. They're the ones who face impossible situations and convince everyone else that victory is still achievable. Your uncle sounds wise. He's the Grand Nagus now, leader of the entire Ferengi Alliance. So yeah, I guess he knows a thing or two about leadership. Nog smiled slightly. Lieutenant Satom, can I ask you something? Are you scared? About the full jump, I mean. Chief O'Brien tried to explain the risks to me, and even with my engineering training, some of it sounded really bad. Alto was quiet for a moment, considering honesty versus bravado. Honesty won. Yeah, I'm scared. Terrified, actually. We're going to attempt something that's never been done before using technology that barely works in our own universe. If it fails, we don't just die, we experience something that's exponentially worse than death. But the alternative is staying here forever, and that's not really an option. We have families back home, people who depend on us, a war we're supposed to be fighting. So we take the risk, and we hope Chief O'Brien and Luca got the math right. I hope they did too, Nog said quietly. Because I'd really like to think that somewhere out there, in another universe, there are people who fight the same fights we do. Different enemies, different technology, but the same principles. It makes the universe feel less lonely, you know. Yeah, Alto agreed. I know exactly what you mean. In Captain Sisko's office, two commanding officers shared a drink and conversation that had nothing to do with tactics, strategy, or dimensional physics. Benjamin Sisko poured Saurian brandy, a bottle he'd been saving for special occasions, and handed a glass to Captain Wilder. To unlikely alliances, Sisko toasted. And the people who make them work, Wilder added, and they drank. Captain, I have a confession, Sisko said after a moment. When you first arrived, I wasn't sure what to make of you. Private military contractor from another universe with technology that scared every intelligence service in the quadrant. Part of me wondered if helping you was the right call, or if I was just creating a bigger problem for later. And now I know I made the right decision. You and your people have proven your character a dozen times over. You fought beside us, saved this station, earned respect from warriors like Martok who don't give respect easily. Whatever happens with your full jump, Captain, I want you to know that Deep Space Nine will remember you. Not as strangers who passed through, but as allies who stood with us when it mattered. Wilder felt something tighten in his chest, an emotion he'd been carefully suppressing for days. Captain Sisko, I've commanded SMS vessels for 8 years. I've made decisions that got people killed, survived situations that should have ended differently, and carried responsibilities that sometimes kept me awake at night. But in all that time, I've never felt more respect for another commanding officer than I do for you. That means a lot, Captain. You didn't have to help us. The Federation could have quarantined the quarter, studied us from a distance, or even turned us over to the Dominion to avoid a war. But you made the call to stand with strangers because it was the right thing to do, regardless of the cost. That's leadership, Benjamin. That's the kind of officer who changes history. Sisko smiled slightly. And you're the kind of officer who inspires loyalty by demonstrating it first. Your crew would follow you into dimensional dissolution because they trust that if there's any way to survive, you'll find it. That's not authority, Captain, that's earned respect. They finished their drinks in companionable silence, two commanders who understood each other in ways that required no further words. Then Sisko stood and extended his hand. Safe journey home, Captain Wilder. And if you ever find your way back to this universe, Deep Space Nine's docking bay will be ready for you. Thank you, Benjamin. For everything. Wilder clasped the offered hand firmly. And if you ever find yourself in our universe, look up the SMS headquarters on Frontier. First round's on me. 8 hours later, the Macross Quarter sat at the edge of Deep Space Nine's operational space, engines running hot and full drive powered up to operational parameters that made every engineer watching nervously check their calculations one more time. The entire crew was at battle stations, not because they expected combat, but because battle stations meant everyone was secured, emergency protocols were active, and if something went catastrophically wrong, they'd have maximum chance of survival. On the bridge, Captain Wilder sat in his command chair and reviewed the final checklist with the methodical precision of someone who knew that lives depended on getting every detail exactly right. Engineering, status, he called out. Full drive at 97% optimal, came Luca's voice, slightly distorted by the energy fields already building around the quarter's hull. Dimensional stabilizers are holding steady. Reactor output is consistent. We're as ready as we're going to be, Captain. Helm, navigation calculations locked in. Affirmative, Captain. Course is plotted to our last known position before dimensional displacement. Assuming the fold works correctly, we should emerge approximately 3 light-years from the Macross Frontier fleet. Tactical, all weapons systems saved. Confirmed, sir. We don't want any energy discharges interfering with the fold field during transition. Communications, final transmission to DS9. Channel open, Captain. They're listening. Wilder took a breath, knowing this might be the last time he ever spoke to people who had become more than allies, they'd become friends. Deep Space Nine, this is Captain Wilder of the Macross Quarter. We're initiating fold jump in 60 seconds. I want to thank Captain Sisko, Commander O'Brien, Lieutenant Dax, and everyone who helped make this possible. You took in strangers, defended us against overwhelming odds, and helped us find a way home when that should have been impossible. The Strategic Military Services doesn't forget its debts. If there's ever a way to repay what you've done for us, we will. Sisko's voice came back immediately, carrying warmth despite the formal channel. Captain Wilder, you already repaid us by fighting beside us and proving that honor and courage exist in every universe. Safe journey home. And may whatever gods watch over dimensional travelers keep you safe. Live long and prosper, Captain Sisko. It's been an honor. Wilder switched to internal comms. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to attempt something that's never been done before. Folding through dimensional barriers using improvised technology and prayers that the math is correct. I won't lie to you about the risks. If this fails, the consequences will be severe. But if we succeed, we go home. We return to the people who depend on us, the missions we're contracted for, and the universe where we belong. So strap in, trust the engineers who got us this far, and let's show the multiverse that SMS doesn't give up just because something's never been done before. Initiating fold jump in 30 seconds. On Deep Space Nine, every senior officer had gathered in ops to watch. The view screen showed the Macross Quarter surrounded by a growing sphere of distorted spacetime as the fold drive built up to transition threshold. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist in their universe flickered around the vessel like aurora borealis made of mathematics and desperate hope. 20 seconds, O'Brien reported quietly, watching his instruments. Dimensional resonance is building. The fold quartz matrix is stable. Energy flow through the Macross cannon's discharge signature is holding within tolerances. 15 seconds, Dax added. I'm detecting superdimension space characteristics forming around the vessel. It's working, the bootstrap field is actually working. 10 seconds, Kira counted down. Whatever happens now, they earn the chance to try. On the quarter's bridge, Wilder watched reality begin to fold around his ship. Space twisted. Time became negotiable. The fundamental laws of physics bent in ways that made instruments scream warnings that there was no category for what they were detecting. 5 seconds to fold transition, Luca transmitted from engineering. All systems nominal. We're actually going to make it, Captain. We're actually. The fold bubble formed, collapsed, reformed, and collapsed again in rapid succession. Something was wrong. The dimensional stabilizers were holding, the fold quartz was resonating correctly, but the transition wasn't completing. They were caught between dimensions, neither fully in one universe nor successfully transitioning to another. What's happening? Wilder demanded. The dimensional barriers are thicker than projected. Luca shouted over the sound of alarms. There's some kind of interference pattern I didn't account for. Captain, the fold bubble is trying to form but it can't quite punch through to superdimension space. We need more power. Reactors already at maximum output, the engineering officer reported. We push any harder and we risk containment failure. Wilder made a command decision in the span of a heartbeat. Fire the Macross cannon. Full discharge, directly into the fold field. Sir, that'll create a feedback loop that could. I know what it could do, Lieutenant. But right now, we're stuck between dimensions and running out of time before the fold drive tears itself apart. Fire the damn cannon. The Macross cannon discharged at point-blank range into the vessel's own fold field, creating an energy cascade that should have been instantly fatal. But instead of destroying the ship, the weapon's dimensional energy signature reinforced the weakening fold bubble, providing exactly the boost needed to punch through the dimensional barriers. Reality screamed. Physics protested. And the Macross Quarter folded. On Deep Space Nine, everyone watching the view screen saw the SMS vessel simply cease to exist. Not explode, not dissolve, not gradually fade, just instantly transition from present to not present with no intermediate state. Did it work? Kira asked into the sudden silence. Dax studied her sensors, analyzing residual energy signatures with the focused intensity of someone looking for patterns in chaos. I'm detecting, yes. Yes. The dimensional weak point we've been monitoring just collapsed. The connection between our universe and theirs just sealed itself. Benjamin, they made it. They actually made it home. Sisko felt relief wash over him so intensely it was almost physical. Chief, how sure are we? As sure as I can be, Captain, O'Brien replied. The dimensional resonance patterns match what we'd expect from a successful fold transition. They're not here anymore, and the physics suggests they're somewhere that isn't our universe. That's about as close to confirmation as we're going to get. Then they made it home, Cisco said quietly, and around Ops, people who had fought alongside SMS exchanged relieved smiles. They actually pulled off the impossible one more time. That seems to have been their specialty, Dax observed with a slight smile. Benjamin, I'm going to miss having variable fighters around. They made space combat significantly more interesting. I'm going to miss having officers who understood that sometimes survival requires pragmatic decisions and desperate courage, Cisco replied. But Dax, they're home now. Fighting their own wars, protecting their own people. And somewhere in another universe, I hope someone is telling the story of how SMS found itself in an impossible situation and refused to give up until they found a way through. In superdimension space, the Macross Quarter materialized with a lurch that made every crew member's stomach protest. Alarms screamed about full drive damage, reactor stress, and approximately 17 other critical systems that needed immediate attention. But they were through. They had survived dimensional transition using technology that shouldn't work, powered by desperation and engineering genius. Navigation, where are we? Wilder demanded. The helm officer worked frantically, comparing star positions against known charts. Captain, we're home. We're in our universe. Position is approximately 5 light-years from Macross Frontier Fleet last known position. We did it, sir. We actually made it home. The bridge erupted in cheers, exhaustion and relief mixing into an emotional release that professional military discipline couldn't quite contain. They had survived dimensional displacement, fought in another universe's war, made allies across reality itself, and then performed what might be the most dangerous fold jump in SMS history to get home. Ozma appeared on the bridge comm screen, his face showing exhaustion and satisfaction in equal measure. Captain, Skull Squadron is reporting in. All pilots accounted for, all fighters secured. We made it back, sir. Against all odds, we made it back. Well done, Commander. Well done, everyone. Wilder allowed himself a moment to feel the weight of command lift slightly. They were home. Damaged, exhausted, and with stories no one would quite believe, but home. Set course for Macross Frontier. And someone get me a direct line to SMS command, they're going to want to hear about where we've been and what we've learned. As the quarter limped toward home at sublight speeds, its fold drive too damaged for another jump until extensive repairs could be completed, Captain Wilder sat in his command chair and thought about the universe they'd left behind. Deep Space Nine would continue its war against the Dominion. Captain Cisco would keep making impossible decisions and somehow finding ways to survive. General Martok would lead Klingon warriors into battle with honor and courage. And somewhere, engineers like O'Brien and scientists like Dax would keep pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They had touched each other's lives across dimensional barriers, proven that courage and honor existed in every reality, and demonstrated that sometimes the most unlikely alliances were the strongest. And though they might never meet again, separated by dimensional barriers that should be impossible to cross, they would remember. SMS would remember the Federation officers who stood with them. Deep Space Nine would remember the warriors from another universe who fought beside them. Some bonds transcended dimensions, physics, and the boundaries of reality itself. And that, perhaps, was the most important discovery of all. The Macross Quarter limped home with battle scars that told stories engineers would analyze for years. The fold drive had been rebuilt 3 times over during their displacement, using Federation technology, Klingon principles, and pure desperation. When SMS Command reviewed Captain Wilder's after-action report, all 400 pages of it, including technical appendices that Chief O'Brien had helped compile, the response was equal parts disbelief and profound respect. Squadron became legendary within SMS for the dimensional displacement incident, though the official records were classified at levels that suggested someone very high up didn't want other universes learning about full technology's potential for cross-dimensional travel. Ozma received a commendation and a promotion he immediately turned down, claiming he was perfectly happy being a squadron commander and didn't need the headaches that came with flag rank. Alto Satom incorporated lessons learned from fighting Jem'Hadar and Klingon into SMS tactical doctrine, writing training manuals about combating swarm tactics and facing enemies who viewed death as victory rather than defeat. Michael Blank's after-action reports on electronic warfare against opponents who used completely different technological frameworks became required reading at SMS technical schools. Luca Angeloni spent 6 months writing technical papers about dimensional barriers, fold physics in foreign universal frameworks, and the theoretical principles behind using directed energy discharge to bootstrap fold fields. His work would eventually lead to breakthroughs in fold drive efficiency that made SMS technology even more advanced than before. And Captain Wilder carried with him the memory of Captain Benjamin Sisko. A reminder that leadership wasn't about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. It was about making the hard choices, standing by your principles, and recognizing that some things were worth fighting for regardless of the strategic calculus. In another universe, on a space station orbiting a planet liberated from occupation, life continued. The Dominion War raged on, though the battle at Deep Space Nine would be remembered as a turning point, the moment when overwhelming Dominion force met Federation determination and was turned back. Captain Sisko continued to make impossible decisions, Major Kira kept fighting for Bayer's independence, and Chief O'Brien went back to performing engineering miracles with insufficient resources and impossible timelines. But sometimes, late at night when the station was quiet and most of the crew was asleep, Sisko would stand at the viewport in his office and look out at the stars. And he would wonder about a ship from another universe, about warriors who had fought beside them and then vanished into dimensional barriers that should be impossible to cross. Some stories didn't have endings, just pauses between chapters. And perhaps somewhere in the multiverse, in some future where dimensional barriers weakened or technology advanced beyond current understanding, those chapters might continue. But for now, both crews had returned to their respective wars, carrying with them the knowledge that courage, honor, and the willingness to stand against impossible odds existed in every universe. And that sometimes, the greatest victories weren't measured in territories conquered or enemies destroyed, but in allies gained and principles upheld. The Macross Quarter had arrived in the Star Trek universe by accident, had survived through skill and determination, and had left having changed both universes in ways that would echo through their respective histories. And in the end, that was enough.